Stop wasting money. Which of the premium apps are actually legit? I tell you what I won't ever do is pay for a service that still has ads. I'll pay for no ads, but will never pay for ads. Looking at you, Hulu. SuperGreg. Contrary to its name, it's one of those apps that basically can help identify, track, and make a perfect watering schedule for plants. I don't have a green thumb, and I've managed to keep about 20 plants alive and thriving for about a year and a half now because of it. Makes plant growing literally idiot-proof. Road Trippers. Plug in your route and you can filter for parks, food, bathrooms, entertainment and stuff along the way. It was a great resource driving cross-country with the littles. That sounds awesome. So I went to check it out on Google Play just to find out that it only has a rating of 2.8. A lot of the recent reviews sound like maybe the app changed a lot and people hate it now. I mean, it's not a subscription, but get the Paprika app if you cook at all. It's not perfect by any means, but you can go to a website and download a recipe and then scale and convert it as needed. I was just talking about this app at a dinner party this past weekend. My husband bought it for me as a Christmas gift almost 20 years ago. It was like $30 back then. He took the time to type in my handwritten recipes and uploaded the ones I had the websites for. I used to print crap out and keep it all in a folder back then. He got me an iPad for Christmas and it came loaded with Paprika and all of my recipes. Best gift ever. Now it's like $4, but I've been using it so long and it's amazing. I love that if other people have the app, you can send them the file of the recipe so they can easily have it as well. I don't know if this counts, but Anki. The desktop version and Android version is free, but the iOS App Store version costs around $20. It's how they keep Anki free for other devices. Anki uses a spaced repetition system, meaning you can create flashcards or use other people's pre-made decks, and Anki puts it through its algorithm and lets you study these flashcards at specific intervals that are optimized for retention, and you go through these flashcards every day. If you've ever wanted to keep something in your head for the long term, usually vocabulary for learning a language, but also medical terms from studying and stuff, yeah, I really recommend it. I had the app on my laptop for around 2 years before buying the app on my phone to use during transit, and I don't regret it at all. Maybe that's what I try out for my next language then, because Memrise and Duolingo did not work for me. This video is not sponsored by Memrise or Duolingo. For any aviation geek, Flight Radar 24. All trails. If it saves you from getting lost when hiking one time, then it's totally worth the cost. And the maps are useful, but the ratings it gives you, they're lies. Everything is an extremely rugged trail. Bring 8 liters of water and an evac helicopter with you at the minimum, is what your average AllTrails reviewer says to anything involving the slightest gentle slope. Maybe it's just the trails I take, but I always feel like the opposite. Every trail is rated like strenuous but moderate at best, only one hard section. Then it turns out it's like a 10-mile hike with a 750-foot gain over like a quarter mile. Oof. I paid a yearly subscription to this app called Finch. It's a self-care app that you can set tasks and goals throughout the day to help remind you to take care of yourself, and the more you take care of yourself and take care of your needs, the more you take care of the little bird that you're nurturing in the app. The more you take care of yourself, the more you send your bird on adventures around the world, and the more items you gain, and the more things you can decorate your birdhouse with, and it's just really a fun way to take care of yourself, to be kind to yourself, and to remember to do tasks that otherwise you would forget to do. You can have friends on there, and you can send them various types of appreciation hugs or things like that. And so as you take care of yourself, your little bird goes on adventures and gets older and grows up and changes and asks you questions, and the way you answer the questions describes your little bird's personality and kind of gives you some insight into your own personality. I think anyone going through a hard time should at least download the Finch app and set up some self-care goals, just like simply getting out of bed or washing your face or brushing your teeth, things like that, because sometimes it's hard to have the executive function to do that, but taking care of this little birdie might give you the motivation to do it, and that's why I do it. Maybe I was doing it wrong, but I felt bad when using Finch. Like every time I wasn't able to achieve the number of goals required to send them on an adventure, I was like, oh. The German weather service doesn't even want your money. Their product is so good that they were sued to give it a price. The state is not allowed to monopolize a niche like that, so wetter.com forced their hand. To distinguish their app from all of the free tosh, they had to make it cost like €2. And if you live in Germany, it's quite frankly more than worth the money. It's the perfect weather app, the customization is wonderful, You can choose when exactly it sends you a push notification for which city, which kind of weather at what minimum strength, for as many places as you want. Its graphs are informative and actually give you 100% of the available information from the weather services, instead of just trying to give you a nice picture of a cloud or whatever. And you have access to all the weather maps your heart could desire. Absolutely worth the money and updated far more reliably than any other weather app. Everyone around asks me for the weather. On Xhunt. With a subscription, it shows property lines along with your real-time location. Even if you're not a hunter, like my wife and I just like to hike, and being able to see property lines on a map lets us make sure we're staying on public land. I feel like I need to remind people that you can get a library card and borrow Kindle and other versions of books for free without leaving your house. The only downside is you might have to wait a bit for the very popular titles. Damn, I came in here looking for some good suggestions, hoping for some great one-time pay apps. Everybody just suggests subscription services. Pay forever. Hey, welcome to Modern Life. It's awesome, but if you pay $14.99 a month, you can get Modern Life Plus. TriPit. Besides being an app that I depend on, the fare tracker feature has saved me thousands of dollars. Once you buy your plane tickets, the app monitors the cost and lets you know if the price has dropped. You can then call the airline and get a refund for the difference between what you paid and the current price. Sometimes it's hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands. Wait, airlines refund you the difference if the price of your ticket drops? Is this a US thing? Nope, I was told this about TripIt as well, and tried it only to discover that no, the airlines don't refund the difference when they drop their fare. However, since airlines legally have the 24-hour cancellation policy, like you get a refund if you cancel within 24 hours of purchase, then if the prices change within 24 hours, you can cancel and repurchase. But you can do that without TripIt as well. Zest. Kinda like Duolingo, but for cooking. I have Babbel. It's like Zest except for languages. Plex. Having your own media server is phenomenal, and curating your content is made much easier. Are there free alternatives? Yep, sure are. I bought Plex Pass 10 years ago for $75 and I did fine. Also on board the YouTube Premium train. Big screen YouTube and not fooling with VPNs and ad blocking with a premium service? That's a bargain. PDF Expert. I used it to annotate and redline work docs, and it easily allows me to access files across a variety of cloud storage, like Dropbox, OneDrive, and Google Drive. Random, but as a pilot, ForeFlight is amazing, and the devs deserve every dollar. Stellarium if you're into astronomy or just the night sky. It's the only app I've ever bought. It's free on the PC though. WinRAR. Easy man, not all of us are millionaires. Yeah, nice try, WinRAR CEO. Strava if you run or cycle. Their segments make me run faster. Dropout. Best $5.99 I spend every month. Wholly original streaming comedy content from the talent behind College Humor. They're growing every year and so many of their shows are hilarious. The majority of them are in a game show format with different concepts. One of the greatest strengths of the whole platform is that most of their actors and comedians are friends and have worked together for years, with crossovers from Smosh, Try Guys, and other internet comedy groups. Sam Reich knows and genuinely loves his people, and it shows. Oh, their shows are so damn funny. Breaking news, where newscasters don't know what the teleprompter is going to tell them to say, they have to say it and not laugh. And very important people. They dress up as an actor, but don't let them see the outfit or makeup. Then the actor has a few minutes to see themselves and make up a character on the spot. The Alien episode was so funny. This is the only streaming service we stopped mooching off of someone else and bought our own subscription specifically to support the service. Other services we're starting to cancel and to only buy on a 1-month basis. But Dropout we're intentionally keeping and now sharing with other people to get them hooked. Dropout does seem like the service the narrator may go for if or when he really needs to up the improv, game show, and interview content in his life, and they truly have a prodigious amount. From what I've heard, they compensate their creators well too, which honestly is refreshing in this age. Again, not a sponsor. I can't recommend Flighty enough if you're an iOS user. No travel-related app has made a bigger difference to how I travel than that. Live activity alerts, often find out about delays or gate changes before the official airline app tells me about it, and it keeps a nice history of all of my travels. I'm a flight attendant and I rely on Flighty more than my airline's own app, which is renowned for having the best app of any of the airlines. Plus, you can turn it into a widget on the lock screen, which is so convenient. When I get in my car to go to work, I can just look at my lock screen and see which terminal or gate I'm flying out of that day, so I know which parking lot to park in. The convenience and ease of use is so satisfying. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? RealCalc Plus Scientific Calculator. Hands down the best mobile device calc app I've ever seen. RadarScope if you're really into weather or storm chasing, but if you're into those things you probably already know or pay for it. I love the M-Ping reports, crowdsourced weather reports. They're awesome for helping me avoid hailstorms. The Narwhale Reddit app. I hated the new Reddit look. I still go out of my way to use old.reddit on a computer. Apollo is too similar to new Reddit for me. Narwhal retains a lot of the simplicity of old Reddit on mobile. RealDebrid. It prefetches torrents so you can stream them directly from RealDebrid's servers without needing to actually torrent anything directly. Along with Streamio as a front end, it's instant streaming of anything. Screw Netflix, screw Amazon, screw Apple, screw Disney. Screw the 100 other channel-specific streaming services. Modern pirating has never been easier. A VPN, Molvad specifically, is the best in my opinion. Nugs.net. If you like jam bands or live music in general, it offers recordings and music streamed live from concerts. Video and audio. It's one of the greatest subscriptions if you like live music. Nova Launcher. I think I bought it for like $4 a while back, and I love that you can customize your icons and stuff. It's a little tricky to figure out, but I love that I can change phones and the overall layout and GUI remain fairly consistent. I switched off Nova after the controversy when they got bought. To be fair, I was switching either way, but this pushed me further away from it. I'm using Niagara Launcher now. It's easily the best launcher I've used. Huckleberry. If you're a new parent, it's a godsend for the first year while you're navigating parenthood with negative hours of sleep. You can log all of the details that your pediatrician will ask about at checkups. We're talking your diapers, milk, and sleep. Also, super helpful when my hubby and I were doing shifts in the first few months to know what the latest and greatest was on our baby. What really makes worth paying for it is the sweet spot calculator that tells you when the baby needs to go down for a nap or bedtime. Yes, you can do the math mentally and watch your baby for their cues, but just trust me. When you're super sleep deprived, it's so worth it because it's one less thing to worry about. For me, PDANet. It's a tethering app with a corresponding Windows client to make it work. It uses your phone's regular data plan instead of the usually limited bullcrap hotspot quotas. And it's the only app I've found that actually prevents your carrier from charging it as a hotspot. Is PDANet still a thing? I used it many years ago. I assumed it died along with Palm One Trio. Bitwarden is awesome. The password manager that works across all devices, even phones. The free version is probably enough for almost everyone, but a yearly subscription is $10, which is a steal for something I use dozens of times every single day. Textra on Android. Best texting app ever. Simply Piano for learning to play, Simply Draw, you get the point of that one. Also, Have Guitar and Sing. Lessons, listens for feedback, and has some great song variety. I learned to play piano on my own. Hero Forge, a 3D modeling app intended for making D&D miniatures. The Pro version massively expands the possibilities and can greatly improve the quality of your work by giving you lots of new options and mechanics, all at a very reasonable price. MacroFactor. It's the only weight loss app that's ever worked for me. I've tried WW, Fitbit, Noom, intermittent fasting, and a few other crazes, but MacroFactor is the first app with which I've reached a weight loss goal and kept it off. I've lost over 50 pounds and it didn't feel like I was dieting. It's adherence neutral, easy to log foods, and it's accurate. I don't mind paying the premium. It's been literally life-changing. I'm now no longer obese, I'm not even overweight. With the app, I can basically choose how much I want to weigh and it will get me there. It's been outstanding for me. I like the Tabs app. I use it to practice my ukulele. It syncs to Spotify and gives me the tabs to liked songs. It tracks your tempo, which I find helpful. There are hundreds of thousands of songs and lessons for theory and practice. I'm not sure if it's on here or not, but the Ultimate Guitar app is great. $60-ish a year, but it has some excellent features for learning new songs and getting better as a player. Procreate. and you can share the purchase with your family on Apple devices, so you only have to buy it once. The only media company I support is Dropout. We love Sam, True American Reich. It makes me so happy to see 2 people have mentioned Dropout so far as I've scrolled this group of answers. YNAB. Your entire relationship with money will change if you stick to it. I tried YNAB for a while, but it was too much hassle. I didn't like their method of budgeting, as it didn't feel intuitive. Also, at the end of every month, I had to spend hours getting my account to reconcile. It was too rigid and not a good method of budgeting. The final nail was when they switched to a subscription model instead of a pay-once one. That's when I abandoned it. Now, I use the Good Budget app. It works on the cash envelopes principle, where you have different envelopes of cash to spend in different categories. Does everything you need for proper budgeting without extra hassles. The free version has 10 budget categories, so enough for most users. Audible. Audiobooks are amazing, and on Audible there are so many book packs with several books in them. Each month you get a credit, and the book packs only cost 1 credit. A couple of months ago I got a pack of 9 books, somewhere between 50 to 60 hours of the series. If anyone likes zombies and wants a really good and long series to dig into, try Slow Burn Box Set by Bobby Adair. As I said, the first 9 books come in a pack for a single credit. It's about a character who gets caught up in a zombie apocalypse, but finds himself half between being a zombie and half normal. He looks like a zombie, but functions like a human. This adds so many layers of interesting challenges and situations. It's a great series. Psst, if you're thinking of getting Audible, check out your local library first. Many now have an app where you can check out ebooks and audiobooks. It's free, and it doesn't enrich Bezos, I think. Not giving your money to Bezos is always a massive plus in the narrator's opinion. And yes, I recently bought my partner a Kobo, and they were able to find just about all of the audiobooks and ebooks they were interested in at my library. Yay, libraries! The New York Times Games app. YouTube Premium. I'm still mad they raised the price recently, though. WinZip. On day 6,356, I took the plunge and never looked back. Relay is amazing for Reddit. Relay for life. I bought Pro years ago and I'm happy to pay the $1 a month, usually from Google Opinions credit, and I never see Reddit ads. JetBrains Sea Lion. It's a great IDE for C and C++ programming. It's got everything and then some, and they treat their customers well. Expensive, but best in class. Also Doppler, a music player for iOS and Mac. Great UI, simple to use, great integration with apps and iDevices, great in combination with an NAS and buying music. Indie developer, too. iExit. My wife got it on her phone a while ago, and it's been a lifesaver on any road trip. $2 for lifetime access. It's a database of everything on a highway exit. Great for looking for gas and food options in one stop. Streamio, the free version, and RealDeeprid, the paid version. As a combo, they're great. No need to pay for any other streaming service anymore. It's by far the best value for what you get that I've seen in this group of answers. I've only been using it for a couple of months, but I've already got it set up for my mum across the country as well. The bottom line is $17 for 6 months for something that replaces every other streaming service. It's a crazy good deal. The only thing I think you can't get on there is live sports or pay-per-view stuff, of course. The short version is that Streamio is a free app that connects you to RealDeeprid, which allows you to stream torrents without the same risk as is associated with downloading torrents. Heavy, spelt H-E-V-Y, to track your workouts. Mealime, the recipe and ingredient app that changed my life. Only $4 a month. I didn't think I had something to contribute, but I've used a billion recipe apps, and this is the one I love the most. Mealime adds recipes constantly of all varieties. You can add your own recipes from online and save them there. When you meal plan, you can select your meals for the week and it makes a simple grocery list for you. And you can of course add whatever else you need for the house as well. $4 a month is very worth it in my opinion, unless someone's found a cheaper or generally better option. My biggest gripe with these kinds of apps is I'm picky and I like quick meals, and they just don't have what I'm looking for most of the time. But I find plenty of dishes I'm interested in on Mealime. Proton Mail. I second this. I've got the VPN version. I got in early, so I got free cloud updates each year, and I'm currently at 5 terabytes of cloud storage, and I haven't paid for anything but mail and VPN services since then. It's gotta be Spotify and Amazon Prime. I don't even notice the money coming out from them, and they're both very handy to have. Well, Amazon is anyway. Spotify is just convenient to not have adverts constantly. I dropped Amazon recently. I wasn't getting anywhere near 2-day shipping, sometimes even by their own metric of the timer starts once it leaves the warehouse. A week after you ordered it. And putting ads on the Prime Video was the final straw for me. It's a shame because I think I was one of the 3 people that actually liked Amazon Music. For the past couple of years of my Prime subscription, my packages would never be delivered within the promised 2-day delivery period. When they added advertising to the Prime movies and TV shows, that was the last straw for me. I haven't had it or missed it for over a year now. What's the most obnoxious reason an employee had to GTFO? Had a guy who we hired who showed a lot of potential in sales. He was a little arrogant and had a good-sized ego, but wasn't enough of a problem. He was very good at his job, and eventually it went to his head. He started showing up late all the time, leaving early, cutting corners where he could. The final straw came when he showed up late and someone spoke up to him about it. He decided the best choice of words he could yell were, "I make the most sales and I have the biggest Johnson, so you can all F off." He was fired on the spot. The customers thought it was pretty funny though. In his defense, if he was making more sales with half the amount of time and meeting quotas, I don't know if I would have cared, but I would have fired him for saying that, so whatever. Yeah, we do let something slide when someone's sales are up, but this wasn't something we could excuse. A pawn shop employee stole $400 from the cash register, then realized that there were video cameras. He had no idea where the security footage was stored, so in order to cover his tracks, he set the store on fire. He actually ended up pretty badly burned in the process and went to jail right after the hospital. I used to own a bakery and a woman quit because she blamed her yeast infection on a bad batch of yeast I bought from China. I might be a guy, but I don't think that's how yeast infections work. I think she might have just been trying to get a rise out of you. The company I work for is a contractor for a giant corporation, and we go to different stores to do work. This new guy we hired seemed normal at first, but it turned out he was a complete frickin' moron. So, one day he goes on site with one of the senior employees to shadow him. This genius thought that because we worked for a giant corporation, we could just eat anything off the shelves and from the refrigerators for free. Well, the employee saw this and was like, "What the frick are you doing? You need to pay." And the manager comes. This guy then started fighting with the manager, then got in his car afterwards and drove off. Needless to say, his butt was fired the next day. We hired somebody to do video and photo media work. After a certain point, he felt it was selling out and didn't want to do media commercially. He wanted to do business stuff. We asked him which role he'd like. If he picked his role, we'd try it out. If he didn't, he'd quit. He decided to quit. He couldn't come up with a role. Medical clinic. An employee told a patient he wants to know what she tastes like. Doesn't get much worse. Not many exit interviews start with, "We really hope that was just you hitting on her, but we're going to inventory the samples just in case." Ugh, I hadn't even thought that the gentleman in question actually does legitimately have the means to consume parts of his patients if that was actually his goal. Gross. I used to manage a store in the mall. One of my employees, I'm pretty sure, was cheating on her husband with a mall security guard. I'd come by on my days off and he'd scurry out in a fluster. I never mentioned it, but the guy was coming by all the time to the point it was keeping her from doing her job. Finally, we had a work meeting and I said in a very non-accusatory way to everyone something like this. "I know it gets slow in here during the week and I'm guilty of it myself, but from now on I need everyone to keep personal visits to a minimum during your lunch break." This one lady stands up and starts screaming at me. How dare I accuse her? I'm a B-word. She quits. She continued to call me and leave me long aggressive rants on voicemail for a while as well. Tool and die shop owner here. One of our machinists would go out for lunch and slam back 3 or 4 beers every day. When I found out, I told him he can't drink beer at lunch. He said it was his personal time and what he did at lunch was his business, not mine. The next day, he came back from lunch smelling like beer and I let him go on the spot. A few years later, he showed up at my office asking for his old job back. He said he was an alcoholic back then and was sorry for his behavior. He was now sober and needed a job. I hired him on the spot and it worked out great for 5 or 6 years. Then he started drinking again and I had to let him go a second time. I have no idea how he's doing now, but I often wonder. He was a great machinist and a nice guy when he was sober. This lady was using the company FedEx to deliver purses for her Etsy job. We had an employee who had been fired and it was one of those really contentious firings and he was physically removed from the building. After he was fired, he used the company FedEx to deliver his eBay sales. The company brought charges against him. It wasn't 1 or 2 sales here and there. He had a whole huge operation and was shipping out more than 20 shipments a week. I guess he thought it was too big a corporation for anyone to be reviewing the FedEx bills. Which was true until one of the big executives hired on a family member and we had to find something for them to do. I worked for a boutique hotel. You know, small, cute, expensive as frick. I was an ops manager. Basically, unless the area manager had to come in, I was the law. I got a frantic call on my downtime from an employee claiming our overnight guy tried to attack him. I gave a sigh, as the guy freaking out is notorious for being a drama queen. I load up the security camera on my home PC, go to the time frame, and holy crap, our night guy legitimately lunged at his coworker and tried to strangle him. Luckily, a desk was between them, and that gave the victim time to bolt. Instantly, I felt like a jerk for doubting him. Well, this is when I call the area manager. We show up at the butt crack of dawn and speak with the guy who made the attack, and he claims he didn't do it. We show him the video, and I crap you not, he responds with, "I don't recall the events of that evening." We fired him on the spot. What started the fight, you ask? Well, the victim had done extra work to make the attacker's shift easier. The attacker felt like this was an insult to his work ethic. Oh, and I got multiple reference requests from him from similar hotels asking for a good reference. I simply said I wasn't able to provide a positive reference, as legally that was all I could say. Years ago, like in the 90s, my husband worked for a small company. He did a little bit of everything, and one of his jobs, along with a coworker, was keeping all the computers running. Now, this was a sales-based company, so all of the salespeople had laptops for themselves. If there was an issue or problem, they'd bring them in to be looked at. So one day, one of the non-local sales guys was in for a meeting. He said, "Hey, my computer is running really slowly. Can you take a look at it?" My husband says, "Yeah, sure, no problem." Sales guy leaves the computer and goes to whatever meeting he was off to. My husband and his colleague take a look and see that the hard drive is nearly full and figured that was slowing things down. They dig deeper and see the computer is filled with adult movies, like filled with it. Material of all sorts. Nothing illegal per se, but very close to it. Now, mind you, the salespeople have signed an agreement that their assigned computer was for business use only, not personal use. So we have a slight problem here. My husband and his colleague, not wanting to make a mountain out of a molehill, and not wanting the guy to lose his job over a fixable problem, just wiped the drive clean, reformatted it, got things set up again, and the computer was working great. The guy comes back the next day and my husband goes, "Hey, Mr. Sales Guy, we took a look at your computer. It was running slowly because the disk was nearly full with personal files, so we wiped it clean, reformatted things, and you're good to go. You know, just a reminder that our company-issued computers are for business use only. If you're looking for something for personal use, here are some relatively inexpensive laptops with a lot of storage space. You can put whatever you want on them. Small investment for privacy, you know?" And with that, they gave him a printout list of some good, reasonably priced laptops he could purchase for himself. The sales guy just kind of mumbled something, grabbed his computer, and was on his way without so much as a thank you. Well, the guys figured that was that, but guess who was back 6 weeks later with a not working at all computer? Yep, same idiot. Problem? Yep, computer was filled again with adult movies. They were done at this point. The two of them went straight to the president's office, showed her what was on the computer, well enough to give her an idea, and explained what had happened previously. She was a very no-nonsense lady, so needless to say, by 3 p.m. that afternoon, that sales guy was no longer employed. What an idiot. Oh boy, they really gave this guy every warning they could give him without directly telling him, "Don't have videos of people doing the nasty on your work computer," and he still didn't get it, or didn't care enough to stop. Stupid either way, my dude. About a year ago, I hired a guy who was down on his luck. Went against my best judgment. Due to the nature of my business, I usually don't hire people that fit his profile. He was out of shape, poor hygiene and stuff, and it wasn't long before I started hearing complaints from female employees and clients. Turns out he'd often attempt to flirt with women, and when turned down, he'd lose his mind and call them terrible names and insults. I don't tolerate that crap, so I gave him a very stern warning. The very next day, I found one of my sweetest female employees visibly upset. Upon inquiring, she said that this idiot had followed her home yesterday to make sure she got home safely. Then he showed up in the morning to escort her to the office. She was genuinely scared. I called him into my office and told him to scram. He threatened to file a complaint with the Department of Labor for discrimination against men who have an innate need to protect women. It didn't matter. I told him to beat it, and now I'm fighting the stupidest claim ever with the Department of Labor. I used to do some consulting work and hired a woman to help out. Mostly clerical stuff and whatnot. I flew down to St. Thomas for a meeting and got a call from Sonitrol at 10:30 p.m. She had keys to my building but didn't know about the alarm. Basically, she and her boyfriend brought another couple down to have a menage a four in one of my offices that I'd converted to a bedroom where I could crash if I worked late. So I called her. She answered mid-deed and acted normal, albeit a little tipsy. I talked about a few mundane details I needed to relay to her anyways, and then mentioned to make sure she was only ever at the office between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., since there was a silent alarm that would call me with audio activities in the building. When I got back to town, her keys were sitting on my desk. I fired a guy because he said he couldn't come to work because it was raining and he'd just washed his car the day before. Had a guy on location fake an injury. Now, mind you, he did injure himself severely, accidentally, but that wasn't his plan. His plan had been to fake a minor injury and get put on workers' comp. The problem was he screwed up how to do it and ended up hurting himself way worse. You ask, how did he know he was trying to fake injure himself? Well, that's very easy to explain. We had a 20-minute tape of him hiding behind one of the trucks on the worksite practicing his fall. Then a written confession from friends saying he'd been planning it since the day we hired him. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Not my business, but my dad's. He hired predominantly people with criminal records, and literally all they had to do was inspect rental cars for damage as the cars left the lot and keep their noses clean. You could do pretty much anything you wanted on your downtime with no complaints from my dad as long as he didn't get any complaints from the owners of the car lot. One day, one of the supervisors from the lot I worked for walks out and asks me for my dad's number. The supervisor had caught a guy stealing gas from the property. He even had security camera footage of it happening. The guy was instantly fired. It didn't stop him from trying to give other people with troubled backgrounds a second chance, though. One of my dad's best friends of 30-plus years and his brother were both ex-cons and struggled to get jobs. Plus, with the exception of this guy, they were all super reliable and gave him no problems. Everyone with no record, me probably being the only exception, gave my dad a ton of problems and weren't as reliable. He and his ex-cons worked well until the business went under many years later. At a previous job, we had issues with food being stolen from the break room fridge. The company made a big stink about it, and it kept happening, so they very obviously installed security cameras in the break room. Like big frickin' cameras in plain sight pointing at the fridge, with our bosses being very direct about it. There is the camera. You really want to lose your job over eating someone's sandwich? A few days later, my guy gets fired for stealing food again. Literally on camera, just grabbing people's lunch out of the fridge and eating it then and there. I work on employee claims and lawsuits. I've told this story on here before. A guy filed a discrimination complaint against the company after he got fired for stealing hot dogs from the refrigerator. This warehouse, big company, this wasn't at my location, they kept a stock of hot dogs for employee appreciation picnics, usually weekly cookouts. Nobody knew why they were disappearing, so announcements were made and all employees were asked to not eat the hot dogs, and if they wanted some they could ask, but couldn't have several packs. That didn't work, so warnings were announced. Finally, a camera was installed near the fridge and he got caught red-handed. He was practically inhaling the hot dogs directly from the fridge by the packet. After he was fired, he filed a discrimination claim on the basis of disability due to his weight. I sent the response with a video of him eating the hot dogs. Also, he couldn't prove his weight was a disability under the ADA, and weight is not a protected class. We won that claim. My dad owned his own business working as a color corrector and editor. He had this one employee who'd been there since day one and ended up being similar to an assistant manager. My dad owned that company for more than 10 years, and just recently, he had to fire that assistant manager guy because apparently he was telling employees and customers that my dad hates gays, people who aren't white, his kids, his whole family, and that he's just a terrible person. Basically driving all business away, pushing my dad's company towards bankruptcy. Turns out this employee was basically just a narcissistic sociopath. My dad was just sad his employees never trusted him enough to tell him about what this guy would say to them. A guy threw a hammer at another guy for changing the radio station. Look, we've all wanted to do this kind of thing before, right? When someone changes the radio, or leaves the door open, or keeps sniffing too loudly, right? You just can't act on those intrusive voices, folks. Wait, we all have those urges though, right? My employee had a corporate card, charged a vacation, purse, fossil watch, takeout, and she was racking up all this evidence along with actually just being miserable to work with. She had a laptop, quote, stolen within weeks of joining our company. I fired her, and a few days later, a watch catalogue from Fossil showed up at the office with her name on it. We have an active court case for all the theft. The one that instantly leaps to mind was the woman who was fired day 2 of a call center training course because she just wouldn't stop having a good time with herself, if you know what I mean. It was really somewhat sad. She was late 30s or early 40s, and I don't think this was an employment scam or anything like that, and more likely just a mental compulsion or substance use. It was not subtle, but done under a shawl or scarf thing draped over her lap. She was politely and quietly asked to stop by the trainer, and then stopped momentarily but started up again 15 to 20 minutes later. I am not sure how she got through HR screening. This was for a wireless phone company too, not a chat line or anything. Back when I had my translation business, I hired a guy to seek out contracts for me, and I'd pay him 20% finder's fee. Instead of sending the finished project to a client, he accidentally sent undressed pictures of himself, and I learned of it when my client forwarded me the mail half an hour later, including the multiple glorious shots of his trouser snake. I don't even. I had a subcontractor on a job for my company trying to convince the client that they should dump me and go with their business and that they'd undercut me by 10%. I learned this from the client, who asked me to find another person to service our contract. I knew somebody who had to take a substance test, so he bought a little sample jar of clean urine with him, went into the toilet, came out, gave the fake sample to whoever was doing the test, and got fired on the spot. The sample was ice cold. Fresh number 1 is hot. My wife's cousin worked with me and her father at our work, landscaping, for a couple of months. He had previous experience and we needed the help, so we hired him, despite warnings to the owner from my father-in-law that he was a complete jerk. To name a few things, we were putting fresh mulch in one of the industrial parks that we maintained, and he had me close the doors to the bed of the truck, after which he raised the bed so that all the mulch would slide to the back. Except the doors weren't designed for that kind of load and immediately sprang open. If they hadn't hit the ground while springing open, they would have royally screwed up the cars on either side of us. He then proceeded to call the owner of the company and tell him what happened, placing all the blame on me for, quote, not closing the doors right. We took him on a paver job and he insisted that he could cut pavers with our wet saw. Except he didn't use gloves, so the material from the pavers being cut, which includes some nasty stuff, absolutely destroyed the skin on his hands, and he called out for the next 2 days because he couldn't move his fingers. That was not the first time he had made that mistake. On the same paver job, which called for a Belgian block to be installed along the driveway, he decided it would be a great idea to mix the mortar and the sand for the base on the owner's freshly paved driveway and use it as he needed it. Except it rained the day he did this, and he ended up with a 3/4-ton block of what was essentially concrete in the middle of their, again, freshly paved driveway. On multiple occasions, we got reports from the grass-cutting crew that he went out with that he did nothing all day except sit in the truck, text his wife, and smoke. He thought he could get away with this because neither myself nor my father-in-law were with him. Eventually, he was fired, and we got a couple of extremely nasty but entertaining phone calls from his wife, calling all of us some choice names while vowing that we were no longer part of his family. My dad and I ran a business together cleaning out foreclosed homes for a real estate agency as I was finishing high school. I was a senior, so I got out at lunchtime, and we could usually get a house done in half a day. Sometimes we'd get some real bad ones, and we had a few guys would call in to see if they wanted to make a quick $100 for a day's work. On my literal last day of class, my dad picked up one of our usual guys and got the house done about 90% by lunch. He was a pretty normal guy that we never had any trouble with. The guy we paid to help my dad went out to his truck and came back into that house with a 9mm and robbed my dad at weapon point of his wallet and took his keys and left in our truck. The funny thing is, my dad only had the cash he was about to give him an hour later for finishing up the house. The state police got the guy's number from us, and they told him some bogus story about how my dad was being investigated for not paying his workers, and if he met the police with the truck, they'd get his statement and let him go. The idiot pulls up and gets arrested on the spot. He got 8 years in prison. That has to be a contender for dumbest criminal, right? If you steal a car and get a call from the popo saying, "Hello, can you bring that exact truck you happen to have to us for an unrelated matter?" you should be abandoning it or fleeing the state. We had a young IT intern helping us with some hardware inventory tasks. It wasn't uncommon for laptops not to make it back to us, as projects would hoard them from terminated employees. But one day, we noticed his backpack open and a laptop of a model we used sticking out. Sent him to the other side of the building and checked the serial number, and yep, it was one he reported as missing during a recent inventory. Opportunistic theft is one thing, but bringing it back into the office every day? Just, wow. There was this one guy at my work, extremely nerdy, and this is from a self-admitting nerd, but this guy was absolutely obsessed with Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Literally the only things he would ever talk about, and would talk about them for as long as you'd let him. One day, I was on register, and I saw him being dragged out of the store by cops in handcuffs. Turns out he'd been shoplifting tons of playing cards of those above-listed games. At least $500 worth, as our store policy was to let an employee get away with it up to that amount before busting them. I think because the charges stick harder or something. Not me, but my dad. His worker asked if he wanted to assist in making crystal. He no longer works for my dad. Also, him and his girlfriend got busted for making said crystal and are serving 5 years. My actual name is Skylar, but that doesn't mean that this is a Breaking Bad reference. Committing no notable offense, but faking incompetence or causing inconvenience in order to be fired and receive severance pay. Yes, I'm familiar with Better Call Saul and I love it, but as it turns out, and hold on to your seats for this, that being a jerk for money is not exclusive to that show. A new heavy mechanic was hired, claimed to have prior experience. He was hired because he had a kid on the way and was in a bad spot financially, and the owners had a soft spot for unlucky people. Within a week, his nickname was Almost. He almost did the work correctly. He almost rewired an electrical system. He almost rebuilt an air dryer successfully. He almost mounted tires. The probability of the part he rebuilt failing within a week was a solid 60%. By the end of week 2, it was clear most of his knowledge was book-learned and not real-world. They wouldn't let him do anything except change oil. Once his probation period was up and he showed no improvement or drive, they let him go. Trucks only make money when they move, and he could not keep them moving. Burglars. What are the best ways to keep you out of our houses? If you're in a very studenty area of UK cities, when you order a taxi, get it from a slightly different address, like a block of flats with lots of lights on, or a house you know has no one living in it, and be waiting outside, or better yet, get it from outside a supermarket or pub. In my city, certain cab drivers are in cahoots with burglars and let them know when a house is empty for most of the night, because the students are out clubbing, even if they leave a light on or something. I live in Liverpool, for everyone asking, which has a lot of break-ins on every road in the student area. And get your frickin' stuff insured. Landlord insurance generally covers the building, but not your possessions. Get an alarm system and use the stickers and signs saying that you have one. I'm more likely to skip a house with an alarm system. Don't make it easy for me. Lock your doors, close your windows, and most importantly, lock them. 95% of the houses I've been in, I just walked through the door or climbed through an open window. Don't leave tools laying around that's going to make my job easier. Ladders, saws, drills, sledgehammers, putty knives. All of these make it easier for me to get into your house. Contrary to popular belief, most dogs aren't a problem. Unless they've been trained to be dog guards, it doesn't take much to make one friendly. And don't advertise. If you just bought an expensive piece of electronic equipment or jewelry or tools, don't brag about it in public, don't leave the trash in sight, and don't post about it on Facebook. Use security hedges under your windows. If your house has rose bushes and your neighbors don't, I'm more likely to try their house first. If it's irreplaceable, don't leave it out in the open. Get a safe for stuff like that, and make sure you bolt it down. I'll happily take a safe with me and open it later. Don't live in a nice neighborhood. When I'm looking to steal, I don't go to the poor neighborhoods. I go to the subdivisions and wealthier areas. Don't assume I'm going to wait until it's dark to rob a place. Between 9 a.m. and noon are the best times to hit. Most everyone's gone to work, and those who aren't are running errands or sleeping. That being said, invest in motion sensor lights. If someone's outside your house at night, this can help. Finally, be suspicious and alert. Is there someone new walking your neighborhood that doesn't live there? Is someone getting yard care or pest control deliveries outside of what's normal for them? Does the same car keep cruising around at different times? You see, I'll study a neighborhood before I strike. Sometimes I'll spend upwards of a month. I'll note times people leave and arrive. I'll note when or if cops patrol certain areas and when. I'll pay attention to the delivery times, mailman times, and various other service people to see when they arrive, what they do, and how they're dressed. I'll watch to see who leaves windows open, who forgets to lock their doors, and so on. It doesn't take much time to make a hit and get away, either. On average, I spend 8 minutes in a house, rarely more than that. Thank you to the actual burglars or people who claim to be burglars writing in. If you'd like to supplement your stories with credentials, feel free to leave your names, numbers, and photographs of any stolen items with our agents at your local police station for verification. Well, I don't steal anymore, but I used to a lot. Alarm signs are the biggest deterrent. I'm going in through your front door. I'm not going to check windows or creep into your backyard or any sketchy stuff like that. The neighbors calling the cops is really the only danger. I dress nicely in a collared shirt and slacks. I'm white and clean-cut and fairly good-looking, a bit like a police officer. Your dog is useless. There's too much on the line to worry about, Fido. I've never been attacked by a dog, but if I was… No, I wouldn't want to hurt your dog, but yes, I would have if it attacked me. If you have an 8-foot-tall, fire-breathing dog, then yes, it probably is a good deterrent. Make sure your dog's fire-breathing is on point because none of us wants your dog to get hurt. I look for houses with the least viewpoints from the neighbors. Having an open front porch is your best defense. You should park in your garage. Parking in front of the garage is a telltale sign that there's likely no other car moving in and out of the garage, and the driver is likely at work. I can tell because of the discoloration. Pick up your newspapers. Stop your mail and newspaper if you're leaving town. If I pop the door and an alarm goes off, I'll probably leave. Make friends with your neighbors so they know who should be at your house. Going in and someone being home is terrifying. I don't want to hurt anybody and I certainly don't want to get shot. Also, the risk for getting caught just went from 3 years to 25. I will run screaming from the frailest old lady. Again, this isn't me anymore, but perhaps it gives you some insight. Stay safe. I see some guys in here saying to have a robust door. I've never been stopped by a door. It's very easy to kick one in and I would carry a flat bar. A solid core door with heavily reinforced framing might work? Spend big if you want this to be a viable defense, because it likely isn't. You could place a sticker in the window that reads, "Premises protected by Radio Shack." That sign really says that you have nothing worth stealing. If anybody tried to steal my 8-track player, I would try and knock them out with my VCR, and if that didn't work, I'd throw my Walkman at them. These answers come from a post titled "Burglars of Reddit." We really are a diverse community, aren't we? Don't post on Facebook that you're not home and how long you'll be out. To elaborate on this, don't post vacation photos to your social media until you're back home. But my coworkers need to see them immediately for the full effect of jealous rage. This one's always confused me. My Facebook posts are set to friends only. I trust my friends. I keep having relatives send me Facebook messages berating me for saying that I'm going to the movies because someone's going to rob me. No, they're not. I spent 1.5 years in prison after being convicted of multiple residential burglaries. I was caught after a mailman called 911 after seeing me go through a window. I had a pretty good run of burglaries from 2007 to 8, and I haven't done any in 7 years, so technology and times have changed since my spree, but here's how I picked my houses. First, I'd generally only go in the daytime during the week. The idea was for the adults to be at work and the kids be at school. 2, I'd try and find a corner house because it would have at least one side with no neighbors. 3, I went in middle-class neighborhoods close to a community college. I live in a large US city and needed an excuse to be in my late 20s walking around with a backpack. I'd stand out too much in wealthy neighborhoods, and poorer neighborhoods often have bars on windows because they expect to be robbed. Middle-class people seem to be careless. I often went in through an unlocked back door. Interestingly enough, I never went in through a front door. I'd always go to the backside because any fences would provide coverage. 4, people think a large dog would be a good deterrent, but I generally avoided those annoying small yapping dogs that never shut up. 5, I often went through a bedroom window, whether it was unlocked or not. I'm committing a major felony. I don't care about a broken window. 6, I usually went to a master bedroom because that's where the good stuff was. Things a homeowner can do besides armed guards around the clock? You can get a dog that doesn't like strangers. I don't care if it's big or small or threatening or friendly. As soon as one dog barks, the whole neighborhood starts barking and announcing a burglar's presence. Cameras. Inside and out. I knew a guy who was caught because he walked by someone's webcam inside their house and ended up on the news. Make the cameras visible. If I see a camera, I'm not just moving on to the next house, I'm going several streets away. A lock-back fence and restricted access to the backyard. That's generally where I broke into the houses from, so it makes sense. I should tell you your beware of dog and security alarm signs and stickers are completely worthless. I once broke into a house through a doggy door. There was no dog home. 5. Try not to have any stools or anything in the backyard. They make climbing through windows easier. You should keep your windows open. Burglars are extremely superstitious and believe that an open window is a sign of a bad omen? I'm sorry, but I have a Mac. It's funny, I was going to post a life pro tip about this subject. The life pro tip: if you're a burglar, talk to children. They'll tell you everything. Example, the other day we were at the store with my 5-year-old. A random woman smiled at her and says, "Hi, aren't you pretty? What's your name?" My daughter then proceeds to rattle off her full name, first, middle, and last, her mummy and daddy's names, what city she lives in, the fact that her older sister just got a new TV and a Nintendo Wii U, and that she's so excited because we're all going to be taking a trip to visit our family in California next month. All in the space of about 30 seconds. She just had so much stuff she was excited to share with her new friend that she couldn't stop talking. Maybe she secretly hates all of you and knew exactly what she was doing. This used to be a TV show, I believe it was called It Takes a Thief, but they had 2 ex-cons rob someone's house and then give that person tips on how they could be better protected. One time they had a cop volunteer to be robbed and he was shocked by how easily the robbers stole his stuff. What about moats? Why is nobody mentioning moats? To all of the many medieval dukes out there writing in with this exact complaint, there haven't been many replies, but speaking from experience, I can tell you that you're better off investing in guards than ditches filled with water. Moats might deter any enemy armies, but a thief will simply walk into a castle under the pretense of doing business alongside other tradesmen and common laborers. Lock your deadbolts. I can't tell you how easy it is to card a boot with the deadbolt unlocked. Might as well leave the door wide open. Confederate flag. It says not only do you own many weapons, but you really want an excuse to use them. If you hear me rattling around your house, you should hide in a closet and jump out to scare me. Rather than shoot you, I would run like a baby, i.e. making brown, waddling away for a few steps before I fall and bash my head on the coffee table. Undressed grandma. That'll scare off anyone. I was once visiting a female friend of mine who lived in a bit of a crappy neighborhood. At the time, I was working construction and swung by after work. I got to the house and took my size 12 work boots off and left them on the front porch. I tend to carry a pair of flip-flops in my bag and changed into those, then we hit a patio for some sunshine beers. I ended up getting my boots at her place and was in no rush to get them back as I had another pair. Now, I don't know how true this is, but she swears that having a pair of big work boots right by her front door made her safer. I'd pretty much forgotten about them as they were on their way out, but she left them right where they were. She had less craziness happen in her front yard, fewer strangers knocking on her door, and she wasn't broken into again at that place. Of course, it could have just been the smell. Cover everything in mayonnaise. I mean everything. The bed, the surfaces, the dog, yourself, everything. Burglars hate mayonnaise. To the legitimate burglars writing in here, I feel I need to tell you something. My brother and one of my friends, completely independently of each other, almost have a fantasy about shooting a burglar. They both have this romantic visualization of them being the good guy hero and burglars being the perfect example of a bad guy that's coming into their house to attack their family. They daydream and plan for this scenario. My brother even has his alarm siren turned off when he's home, so it only rings on his phone and won't scare an intruder away, like he's hunting or something. I just want you to know that these people are out there. If they break into your house, you're getting shot by a guy with a raging hero hard-on. And I frequently hear the same thing. You need to shoot to kill, because if you don't, they'll sue you. It's not worth it. Stay out of other people's houses. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. This article from the Center for Problem-Oriented Policing is not written by a burglar, but it answers the question quite thoroughly. Burglars select targets based on a number of key factors, including the following: familiarity with the target and convenience of the location, like houses near a ready pool of offenders, houses near major thoroughfares, houses on the outskirts of the neighborhoods, houses previously burglarized, or houses near burglarized houses. Then occupancy, houses vacant for extended periods, houses routinely vacant during the day, houses of new residents, houses without dogs. Then there's visibility or surveillability, houses with cover, houses that are secluded, houses with poor lighting, houses on corners, houses with concealing architectural designs. Accessibility, houses easily entered through the side or back doors or windows, houses next to alleys, vulnerability or security, houses with weakened entry points, houses whose residents are careless about security, houses with few or no security devices, and finally, potential rewards, houses displaying signs of wealth. This is a huge fear of mine, but what do burglars do with pets? I don't even care about my electronics, but don't you dare touch Mr. Mittens. 3 words. Rooftop Korean snipers. I've got a shoddy tripwire trap on every entrance. I've seen a couple of these supposed experts saying your dog is useless. That's bullcrap. If you have a little yappy dog, that makes sense, but my home was broken into several years ago during the middle of the day. I had a lab GSD mix, like a lot of people would say nicest dog ever, would probably kiss you to death, blah blah blah. And I got a call from the cops because someone driving by called the police after seeing a bloody man in a ripped shirt running away from our front door. When I got home, my front door area just inside my house had what looked like a little dried blood on the floor and door. The police said when they arrived the dog was just laying there staring at the door. The police said he barked as they arrived, but quickly and easily calmed down. Nothing was taken, and only a small table by the door where we put our keys and stuff was knocked over. Long story short, the guy brought himself to the hospital and the cops picked him up as he was leaving. We didn't press charges for breaking in or anything, just let the police handle it, and never actually saw the guy, but the police officer told us his cheek was totally torn from the side of his mouth towards his jawline. We figured Pickles did enough justice and our lives would be easier to just move on. Yeah, there's been some back and forth on whether or not a dog is an issue, but this is our first account of an otherwise sweet pooch absolutely wrecking a wannabe thief's day. I guess it depends on the thief's animal handling skills and on the random quirks of personality that the doggo in question has. I grew up with a whole lot of thieving scumbags. Bank robbers, carjackers, you name it. So here are my suggestions in no particular order. Get a big frickin' dog. Very few thieves want to deal with that. If they aren't specifically targeting your house, then they'll move on to the next one. For houses they are targeting, they'll leave poisoned food outside and keep an eye out for that. Don't use window air conditioners. This was by far the most common way to gain access by my friends. Kick in the AC and climb on in. If nothing of value was found, the AC could be taken in for scrap metal. Motion detecting lights. They're a minor annoyance, and they'll scare off the brainless junkies. Visible cameras. They can be fake, though they're so cheap you may as well just spring for real ones. Don't leave your garage door open. Thieves like to drive around nice neighborhoods looking for people who've left their garages open. They love a situation where someone might be mowing their backyard. Quickly hop out the car, run into the garage, grab as many tools as they can, and run. If they bought a truck, they'll be grabbing bigger stuff. You probably won't even notice or know what happened. Make it a royal pain in the butt to get into your backyard. A 10-foot fence would be nice. No one likes breaking in through the front door or front windows. Nobody likes scaling 10-foot fences either. This complements the get a big fricking dog concept. Don't keep your car keys on a hook next to the front door. Newer cars are impossible for an average thief to hotwire. Easy as heck to kick in your front door and snatch the keys straight off the hook though. And related to the above, don't answer the door for strangers. If thieves are casing out the neighborhood, they'll pretend to be magazine salesmen or Jehovah's Witnesses just to take a peek of what's inside, especially that hook for car keys. Once again, a big frickin' dog can help here. Get an alarm system. If you can't pony up for that, get the stickers and signage off eBay. Don't keep anything in your car, especially work trucks or vans. Heck, I even know of someone who robbed a cop car. Keep your vehicles empty. Locks don't matter. The lock on the back door of a work van can be popped out in 5 seconds with a slide, puller, and a screw. The locks on your house are frickin' useless as well. If you're really paranoid and have a good budget, steel door frame and a solid steel door. I don't have much of any other advice on that. Just don't trust locks. Lock those doors. Even though I don't think much of locks, don't leave your house unlocked either. Deadbolts on every exterior door. Keep your expensive stuff out of sight. Your 70-inch flat screen should not be visible from the street. Your MacBook Pro shouldn't be kept right in front of your first-floor office window. Don't invite strangers over. Hosting an open invitation kegger is a terrible idea. If a thief shows up, they're either stealing something right then and there or they're casing the joint to come back later. If you have a safe, use it. It's utterly stupid how many people who have them just leave them open all the time because it's annoying. If you have firearms, try to keep that information to yourself. There's a whole subset of thieves dedicated to scouting out weapon owners and robbing them when they're not home. Don't post your entire social life publicly on social media. The people scouting out robberies aren't always across the street in a sketchy van. They're just following you on Facebook, Twitter, Foursquare, and Instagram. Keep anything that's really expensive in a bank security box. If your grandmother passed on a $50K diamond ring to you, don't keep it in your jewelry box. Don't do illegal stuff. The houses of substance dealers are robbed on a constant basis because the thieves know the cops won't get called, and the propensity for those victims to have expensive jewelry and electronics as collateral. Stay on the up and up, and a lot of trouble will avoid you. Leave the TV and lights on when you're not home. Not only does it give the impression of someone being home, it will also entertain and comfort your big frickin' dog. If you're in an apartment, do whatever you can to add more locks, if possible according to your lease. Alarm system, cameras, all that stuff. There are lots of shady maintenance men and landlords out there. Lock your patio door even if you live on the 10th floor. Scaling the sides of buildings is actually pretty frickin' easy. If you're prohibited from owning a big frickin' dog, a little annoying yip-yapping ankle-biting dog can do something. Cats are fricking useless. Keep the flaunting to a minimum. If you have an expensive vehicle, at least try to keep it in a garage. If you have lots of expensive tools, don't fly a snap-on banner outside your garage. Don't put up a "This house is protected by Smith & Wesson" sign. Read up and be aware of how most popular scams work. Water meter scams, fence salesman scams, etc. Most of the time, someone will be distracting you somehow while their accomplice sneaks into your home. Just don't talk to strangers and you'll avoid all of them. Junkies love to rob the elderly. Medications and jewelry. Your broke college butt is probably safe, but please make sure your grandmother is all set. Don't leave an extra key under your doormat or under a rock or in your mailbox or on top of the doorframe. None of those. Also worth discussing are what to do when a burglar is in your house. You should get the F out. Your PlayStation is not worth getting shanked over. You will most likely lose any fights you start, so don't do that. Call the cops. Don't count on them to save you, but do it anyways. At the very least, you'll most likely have to file a police report anyways for an insurance claim. The chambering of a shotty generally scares the crap out of thieves. Real thieves will get the frick out of there if they think someone has a weapon. Junkies, though, might be too messed up to notice. Or they might have their own and not care. Still best to get the F out. If there is no way to avoid an encounter with the robber, get undressed. Not down to your undies, I mean 100% starkers. Get crazy. Yell things. This is not advised for attractive women, but for the average male on the internet, that's a viable deterrent for anyone. Your thief almost certainly has a specific game plan in mind. They know how they're going in, where they plan to go, what they plan to take, where they plan to exit, and how they plan to leave. Anything that can be done that will majorly disrupt their plan will generally make them leave ASAP. Mace. You can't legally procure mace. Sporting goods stores can carry bear spray. If you can't get that either for some reason, wasp or hornet spray. Again, I really can't stress this enough. Goal number 1 is to get the F out. Don't bring wasp spray to a firefight. If you have your keys on you, set off your car alarm. And lastly, just some general advice. Follow your local news and police reports vigorously. You should be able to get a feel for the kinds of crime happening in your area, and you can figure out a game plan based on that. Personally, my area is high crime, but it's all smash and grab type thefts. While my vehicle has been robbed 3 times in the past year, I have zero concern whatsoever that I'll be the victim of an armed home invasion. It's just not the style of the area. If you have a choice, try to live in a moderately populated area near a police station. Living at the end of an isolated cul-de-sac is going to be a lot easier for a thief to get into without being noticed than a townhouse in a 100-unit property. Be friendly with your neighbors to the point where they'll recognize any sketchy activity. Keep your nose clean and don't associate yourself with sketchy characters. Crime begets crime. It's callous for me to say, but really 90% of the victims of crime that I know had it coming. Keep receipts for anything you paid more than $250 for, and keep them in a fireproof safe. If you do end up having to file an insurance claim, they're going to screw you over hardcore without any documentation. Be aware that for high-ticket items, they're required to be scheduled on your policy ahead of time. If you have a $15,000 home theater system or $20,000 in collectible Magic the Gathering cards, your insurance company needs to know about that ahead of time. Keep serial numbers and photos if possible of anything you care about. If your laptop gets stolen and you see it the next day in the pawn shop down the street, it won't mean anything unless you have that serial number already on file somewhere. Register all of your products with the manufacturer whenever possible. You will have one hell of a time dealing with an automotive theft claim if the thief used your car keys. Keep those safe. Make copies of all your important documents, including copies of all your credit cards. It'll be 100 times easier to cancel all of them if a thief gets them. Shred any important documents you're throwing out. I could write endlessly about identity theft. I'll save that for another day. Big fricking dog. Regularly back up your computer to some cloud-based service. Dropbox, Google Drive and stuff. If someone steals your laptop, it shouldn't mess up your life. Install some sort of tracking app on your computer and phone right now if you haven't already. What can a guy do that sets off your man-child alert? They will always find some way to push the blame onto others. It's never their fault. And yes, I have to agree that in general this applies to both men and women. And maybe my cat. Incredibly irresponsible, puts off things indefinitely until someone else does it for them. Probably the kind to complain that their mother or girlfriend or wife is a nag, because they have to resort to that to get them to do crap. This comment was a huge realization for me. No wonder I haven't found an acceptable way to ask him to do anything. There is no acceptable way. There really isn't. You can't force someone to be responsible. I really wish I hadn't wasted over a decade of my life with that guy. People aren't going to change if they don't want to, and he was happy being a man-child. Monster Energy logos on his back window. I've seen a couple of people recently, usually at festivals with Monster tattoos. I'm unsure if Monster are actually paying them to tattoo their logo on their arms or if they're just really that obsessed with the energy drink. When he doesn't know how to do a load of washing and refuses to try and learn. This in general. If someone refuses to try and learn a common task because they don't want to, that person has some latent narcissism that you're going to run into down the line. When they're all over a girl and then she rejects them and suddenly she's a grotesque demon, apparently. Throws a tantrum when they don't get their way, like a child screaming in a store because their mum wouldn't buy them a toy. So they never grew out of that. They only act nice because they want something in return. Everything has strings and an underwritten contract. I've known and read of a few breakups that happened because it turns out after they moved out of their parents' place, they treated their partner like they were their new mother or father. The guys who not only can't cook or clean or do basic adult domestic tasks, but they're weirdly proud of the fact to the point of bragging about it. No, I'm not impressed that you're an adult and can't manage to take care of yourself, bro. Get your crap together. After seeing some of these, it feels good that none of it describes me. Although, I do still feel like a teenager who just wants to play video games and eat junk food. The key is that even though we want to play video games, we sweep the floors, do the dishes, walk the dogs, and then play video games. Ditto from me. The narrator did kind of come to this question to see how much of a man-child he was. Turns out there's a bunch of us repressed man-children who managed to adult at least in our working and relationship lives. Mostly. Ugh, when his mom still runs his life. You should have added, and he's still okay with his mum running his life. I had to fight nails and teeth to get my independence from my mother and couldn't make it happen. I had to leave it all behind. I was always her little boy, forcing her unwanted attention on me when she needed emotional relief or an ego boost whilst denying my needs. Mothers, treat your kids as human beings. They're not your emotional support animals. Filthy apartment. Floors never swept or washed. Toilet smells like hell's urinal. Piles of dirty laundry, few or no kitchen utensils, garbage hasn't been taken out in who knows how long, kitchen littered with Gatorade bottles and fast food or frozen meal containers, nasty bedsheets and posters of scantily clad models or Scarface movie posters as the only decorations. My roommates dragged me down to that level over time. Putting up with other people's addictions and misuse of time is tiring. Doesn't offer to help clean up after you cook for him. Goes straight to the couch. Help? Frick that. One party cooks, the other washes up. That's like 99% of the reason I got good at cooking. When my now fiancé moved out for the first time and he expected me to come over to cook and clean for him, he learned pretty quick and is now a better cook than me. Go figure. Still holding on to a lie even after he's been caught. I'm holding the truth to his face, but he still denies it. Damn, he could have become a politician. These answers are making me feel real good about myself. Can't keep a relationship going because they're more in love with a fantasy version of the girl they were with, so whenever a problem actually comes along, instead of working through it, they get upset and bail because she wasn't who he thought she was, and doesn't actually put work into anything. I had an ex in his mid-20s who had his mum cut his toenails for him. Cut his toenails. I noped the F out, but I'm ashamed of how long it took me. Oh, here we go. I had a roommate named Fergus. He moved in with me and one other girl in August. About November, we noticed that Fergus, while using every dish in the house, had never actually washed anything. The other girl and I had been taking turns, but not talking about it since our schedules were so opposite, so we'd never realized that Fergus was such a piece of crap. But then, she went out of state for a couple of months, and I quickly told Fergus playtime was over. It was his turn to do the dishes. He had the good grace to apologize for not getting around to it, and mentioned that if he'd ever seen the sink really full, he'd of course have done some dishes, but we'd just washed his stuff before he had a chance. Okay, whatever, man. I did the dishes from a small Thanksgiving dinner and then left the kitchen to Fergus. I used paper plates and cups and plastic silverware for the next month. I didn't really cook, just microwaved it. It was finals anyways. And Fergus proceeded to use dishes without washing them until every cupboard was empty and every glass, plate, bowl, cup, and fork was crusted and filthy in a pile. He clearly expected me to cave if he made a big enough mess. The other girl would have within a week. I am made of sterner stuff, however. I fully intended to wait however long it took. Christmas Eve morning, after 30 days of this bullcrap, I awake to the astonishing sound of the kitchen being cleaned. There's water running, plates clinking, dishwasher going. I walked out in amazement and found a complete stranger cleaning my kitchen. She looked up at me in somewhat unfriendly manner, and Fergus pipes up from the living room, where he's sitting motionless on his phone. "Hey, this is Mum. She came to pick me up for Christmas." I laughed. Obnoxiously. I laughed at the man-child who got his mum to drive 4 hours to do his dishes and drive him home when he was 25 years old. She defended him. I don't see anything funny about this. Oh, this is hilarious, I said and went back to my room. She mopped the floor and then they left. After that, I basically told him he was going to pay a service or pay me to clean the kitchen once a week because he obviously couldn't be trusted with the level of responsibility you'd give a 13-year-old. His mum sent him an extra $75 a month for the rest of the lease. I had a roommate who always thought he was pulling his own weight. It was a self-perception issue. To counter this, I always cleaned my own dishes immediately and put them back in the cabinets and never filled the sink. When the sink got full, he'd get mad at me. It was pretty funny. Good guy, just lazy. One thing that bothered me though is that when he'd put bags of trash by the door instead of taking them out. Like, dude, just walk an extra 10 feet instead of leaving smelly garbage by the door. Somebody that absolutely won't prioritize and budget their money wisely. My ex-roommate was quick to spend his money on gambling, beer, and cigarettes, but always cried poor when it came time to pay rent, along with his share of the household bills, and bugged his mum like crazy to give him money every single time. His mum was apparently well off. Okay, so there's no mention of still playing with Lego, so I think I'm safe. I don't play. I build. If a spaceship happens to follow a logical flight plan and makes a whoosh sound on its way to the display shelf, that's not my fault. Living like a smackhead, eating like a 12-year-old, doesn't read, doesn't progress, complains endlessly, never assumes responsibility, but would say things like, "I'm such a jerk, I'm so stupid, I'm a mess." Like, yeah, okay, and what are you going to do about it, Michael? Tantrums. My ex broke up with me over the phone at 1:30 a.m. a few days before Christmas because I told him I was just going to hang out at my place that day and have a bath, do my nails and face mask, girly stuff like that. Apparently that was rude because our want for chill days away from each other should align. He was also scandalized when I said, okay, and refused to take him back. No thanks, crazy moron, I'm good. I love the stunned Pikachu face when someone finds out that you're actually fine with them leaving your life or business. Bluff called, motherfricker. Now grow up and learn to do your dishes. He will only clean what mess he makes. Oh, you made dinner. Clean the dishes you used. I'll wash my drinking glass since I filled it. Or he can't be wrong, misunderstand, misspeak, or not hear something correctly. I never said that. That's not something I'd say. Not seeing something from a different perspective, like picking your battles. A Mario Kart race is not worth throwing and destroying a controller, and say that he just felt cheated. We can't play certain games because he gets aggressive when he loses, or others are in the lead and complains up until he wins at the end. He does stuff to other people in the game that if done to him, he'd throw a tantrum over. Thinking of capricious reasons to cheat on their significant other because they can't man up to go through with a breakup. You can't really justify cheating at all, but I've heard of some really dumb freaking excuses over the years. He whines all the time. I've known him from age 37 to 60 and, oh my, still just a complainer. He looked like the perfect catch on paper, but his emotional neediness and whining are a major turnoff. Tried the relationship, now trying friendship, but I just can't. For me, it would be a man who makes no effort to keep his home clean, who can't even cook the most rudimentary of meals, and who sees absolutely no problem with that. It shows a pretty marked immaturity that I don't have time to deal with. Not to mention that he'd better not even think that I'd automatically be glad to do all of this for him just because I'm a woman. And I'm not talking Martha Stewart levels of cooking and cleaning either. My place isn't spotless and I'm no gourmet chef, but I expect to see just enough to keep the health department away and maybe eat a home-cooked meal once or twice a week. Still completely dependent on the mother. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I know a guy who constantly whines about being single. He's 33. He'll crush on one girl for like 6 months without showing any sign of interest, finally work up the nerve to ask her out, get rejected and pine after her for another year or so, hoping she'll change her mind. Despite being objectively very unattractive, not having a career, relying on friends to rent him space well below market value, he'll only ever aim for girls that are like an 8 or higher. He has ridiculous criteria too. Refuses to date anyone taller than him, and he's like 5'7", or older than him, wants to marry into money, expects his future wife to be a homemaker raising their 5 to 8 kids, thinks doing the deed in anything other than missionary position with the lights off is gross. He's had girls interested in him before, girls who were definitely out of his league, and he never pursued anything because they were a couple of years older or a couple of inches taller than him. Yes, he's a complete man-child and I'm positive he'll die alone. And no, I'm not a woman, but 0 fricks given I'm not removing this comment. When the guy is in denial about calling anything you do together a date, but when you ask if what you're doing is a date or bring up the notion that it could be something other than a casual hookup, you're suddenly a psychotic stage 5 clinger who wants to get married and have 1,000,000 babies on a strict timeline. Jeez, dude. I just asked if you were on a date because it wasn't clear. I wasn't asking you to frickin' marry me. Oh boy, do I have a list from you from my first serious boyfriend. His mum made his lunch every day. PB&J, peanut butter cups, and little Debbie cakes. Just sugar, basically. He wanted to go out for breakfast every Sunday, but wouldn't get out of bed until I showed up at his house to wake him. He flipped out if I didn't text him every morning before I went to class, and called him every night before I went to bed. No, he couldn't be the one to call or text me, that was my job apparently. He punched inanimate objects when he was mad. Complained that I leaked bodily fluids on his sheets because he didn't want mummy to see them when she did his laundry. And this last one is really bizarre. He thought throwing soap at the wall when staying in a hotel was really fun and entertaining. Soap. Like in a hotel that had a TV that he was staying in for one night, not a windowless prison where he was forced to use his meager supply of toiletries to amuse himself. They're always telling you to let go of the inconsiderate things they do instead of owning up to them. Like it's not their fault they're being a jerk to you, you just need to not get so angry about it. Nothing is ever the man-child's fault, especially since he has his whole life ahead of him to grow and learn from all the faults he refuses to admit he has. The man-child has no need for future plans, he goes with the flow, and any attempt at suggestion that maybe a 30-year-old adult should at least have a vague idea of what they want to do in the next year or so of their lives is swiftly met with accusations of being controlling or pushy or uptight. When confronted with a fault that's undeniable, he lashes out at you for something you did years ago, or perhaps he just makes up something on the spot, or simply uses something positive as a negative. For instance, you just made breakfast, but because he's mad at you for pointing out something he didn't feel like acknowledging, he claims that you never make breakfast and the fact that you did doesn't count because you never do. In fact, accusations involving definitives, such as never, are constant. You never do anything, you never clean anything, you never do what I tell you to do. You're always never doing something, and on the off chance that you do, it doesn't count because you never do it. Won't put up with unpleasant shopping trips. I know a guy that throws the biggest fit if his wife goes off their shopping list or wants to make a stop somewhere else. She'll go with him to Best Buy while he looks at video games, but when she wants to stop at Bath & Body Works right next door, he freaks out and complains the second they walk in the door about how bored he is and pouts through the whole trip. Being proud of not reading. How involved his mummy is in his life. Good relationship with mum? Keeping in touch? Family holidays? Healthy boundaries? Maybe calls for advice when cooking something complicated or what the frick to do with silk? Good. When mum stops by the house all the time, stocks his fridge, brings him meals, does laundry, buys his clothes, cleans his house, and has him over for dinner 3 nights a week? Bad. Mummy is telling him who he should and shouldn't date, what jobs he should have, what he should be doing with his money, or is still holding the apron strings after, say, 21? That's the worst, but not necessarily his fault. Other red flags: refusal to learn basic adult concepts like how to cook, clean, launder, or maintain things, and claiming it's someone else's job. Constantly shifting blame, living in a house that looks like it was decorated by a 15-year-old, inability to hold a conversation about anything more serious than TV, video games, or movies. The narrator will pipe in and try to answer the valid point that there are women who behave like this. Yes, they do exist. But it is a weird social phenomenon that in my experience this behavior does tend to manifest more in us guys, either because society caters to us a bit more or because of traditional gender roles. Who can say? Is 25, still lives with parents and doesn't pay rent. Doesn't do his own laundry and doesn't cook for himself. Doesn't take out the trash and hardly ever cleans his room. Spends all day on Reddit and only works part-time. Oh wait, that's me. Look, I'm working on it. Throws a tantrum when a news organization writes an article critical of him and then criticizes that organization for being fake news and declares the press to be an enemy of the American people. Oh my god, I almost married one. Here, have a list. Forces himself to dislike something just because you like it. You ever seen a grown man grit or grind his teeth while playing a video game you encouraged him to try? I have. Fussy eater. Won't eat anything that isn't pizza or burgers and has zero interest in broadening his culinary horizons. I was sympathetic at first, but he aggressively refused all of my suggestions. Owns various books on get-rich-quick schemes. I know, I probably should have left them right then and there. Spontaneous vehicle purchases. He owns a classic car from high school that he refuses to part with, but never drives it, works on it, or does anything with it except keep it insured and have difficulty finding places to park it. He had this facade of being handy, but every time he'd set out to do something handy, he needed someone else there to help him. I James to come over and help me with the brakes on my car. I called my dad to help with the tile backsplash in our kitchen. Stuff like that. And then they'd just end up doing it for him. Makes fun of the things you like. Pay attention to this, seriously. A normal guy should be able to appreciate that you like things, even if they're different from the things that he likes. He outright mocked me for enjoying certain video games that weren't the kill, loot, instant gratification variety. A man appreciates and respects your choices. A child points and laughs at the things you like. Wants the house perfectly spotless, but will never do anything to get off his lazy butt to help with that. Works a part-time job and refuses to consider trying to go back to school or do really anything to get him out of the situation that isn't whining about not getting a promotion after working sorting mail for nearly 10 years. Honestly, liberal arts degree. Such entitlement. Wow. Wants a dog? Gets a dog, does absolutely F all with taking care of or cleaning up after or training the dog. Doesn't want to have kids yet because then he'll have to share his toys. Seriously. He's not being funny when he says crap like this. He's legitimately a greedy, selfish man-baby, and you should not procreate with him. Learn from my almost mistake. Run. Buys expensive things right after you tell him not to buy those things and then expects it to just be okay. Always talks about having a ton of money coming in. Truth is, he has no money coming in, just entitlement issues up the wazoo. He wants to dazzle you with cash he doesn't actually have. Wants to become a lawyer, has no interest in actually putting any effort into becoming a lawyer. In truth, he actually just wants to argue more and get away with saying stupid crap in front of a judge. This is not the kind of person who becomes a lawyer. Any freaking time he playfully whines about something, but I want to see X movie, not Y, but I want a new one because mine's not working properly. Stuff like that, and then playfully laughs. Pro tip, it's not fake whining to be funny, it's actual whining disguised as fake funny whining. Just stay away from any and all whining. Having his mother appear on your doorstep at random freaking times to attack you after you dump him and he kicks himself out. That was fun. Not. They were looking in my freaking windows to see if I was home. Sending endless long texts and emails after you dump him saying he's entitled to spousal support and you paying off all of his debt that he accrued without your input, even though he's left you with 2 pets and a house you can barely afford to pay on your own. That was actually fun. I forwarded everything to my family lawyer to discredit him. Really, he did it all himself. His relatives post vaguely on their Facebook about how they're happy in their marriages or whatever and would never treat their spouses like that. Translation, man baby has been crying to his entire family, you're the scum of the earth, how dare you find fault in this perfect cinnamon roll. And probably the biggest one, talks a lot about stuff he wants, never actually puts forward any effort into getting it, never. He just expects it to magically happen without his input at all. Everything you do annoys him. Literally everything. How dare you listen to music while you cook or clean? How dare you soak potting soil in the sink for plant pots? It's so dirty even though it takes less than a minute to wipe up. How dare you get back into painting? That's money I could spend on pizza. How dare you order off the dinner menu? Never mind that I go for lunch twice a week with my friend Kyle. It's so expensive when I eat out with you maybe twice a year. If you upset his happy norm by existing, you're sure to hear some whining about it. We were together nearly 5 years. I'm sure I'll come up with more. Furiously taking notes. Just passing by, don't worry about me. One that I haven't seen mentioned yet is pickup artistry. It covers all manner of insecurity, immaturity, or lack of personal growth by doubling down on the objectifying of women. See, it's not so bad to get rejected by a girl if she's just one of 20 meat socks you're pursuing at a time. They try something once, and when it doesn't immediately work for them, they wallow in self-pity rather than try again. I can't ask out a girl, I got rejected once and it hurts too bad. I can't exercise, I ran a mile once and it didn't do anything. I tried to learn a foreign language once, but it took too long. All actual quotes from the man-children in my life. Something I haven't seen mentioned yet is finances. Man-children typically either don't work, or if they do, they'll work part-time at a minimum wage job. They'll call in on the weekends because they want to party, and they're just too lazy to actually put in effort to work more. Unless they're rich and are used to daddy buying everything for them, they never have much money. They're always broke when it comes time to pay the rent or the electric bill, but they mysteriously always have money to buy video games or green herb. How did your parents manipulate you to make parenting easier? When I was young, my parents brought home this very fancy maple syrup from Toronto, and I fell in love with it. We used it a few times, and then they told me it had run out, so we were using a normal version like Aunt Jemima's or something. Apparently, I threw a temper tantrum. From then on, I'd be a little monster if we didn't use the expensive syrup. Today, we made waffles while I was visiting home for a week, and my mum mentioned how she had just put Aunt Jemima's back into the fancy maple syrup bottle, and how I'd always say something like, "See, Mum, I can taste the difference." For 10 years, my parents have been laughing at my jerkishness. When I was a kid, we'd take long family trips to Ohio to visit my grandparents. I absolutely loved these trips. My grandparents had all sorts of cool stuff in the house, 2 big apple trees in the front yard, and they lived next to a train track. My grandpa also loved Golden Grahams. Every time my brothers and I would visit, he'd open his cupboard to reveal 4 or 5 boxes of Golden Grahams, explaining how much he loved them and that he got extra boxes just because we were visiting. I always thought it was so cool that my grandpa, who was, old, had the same favorite cereal as me. I'd always feast on cereal every time we went to visit. Of course, years after he died, I was relating this story to someone, and the obvious dawned on me. Later, I asked my mother if Grandpa even liked Golden Grahams, and she got this big smile on her face, looked a little sad, and said, "No, but he knew you did." It broke my heart. Still the story I tell when I remember him. When I was a kid, I had a pet hamster that I loved, as he'd walk up my arm and sleep on my shoulder. Fast forward to age 16, my dad and I were talking about my childhood, and he let slip, "Oh, you mean hamster 1 or hamster 2? What?" was my reaction. Turns out my dad accidentally left my hamster's cage in the sun and my hamster dehydrated. Then, to make it better, they had the cage on their bed as they were deciding what to do, and I came in, pet the dead hamster and said, "Bye, I'll see you later after school." My dad went to get a new hamster that day, and when I got back from school, he said I was ecstatic that my hamster got bigger. My mum confirmed the story. The monster juice that my mum would spray around my room to keep monsters out? That was actually just water with a large amount of my dad's cologne sprayed into it. I used to just spew out random numbers to my mum, telling to add, subtract, and multiply, and she'd in turn tell me what the final number would be. It blew my mind, and she was the damn smartest person on the planet. Then I got clever. One day I got a calculator out to make sure she had it right. She did not. I do have to wonder at what point these fun little mistruths cross over into damaging stuff for us when we're kids. I honestly think it's so hard to know where to draw the line, and even varies from child to child as well. Parenting is a minefield. My mum used to turn the clocks forward when I had sleepovers at her house. She'd run in to change the clock from 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. while we were distracted. This was before we had cell phones, you see. We'd be amazed at how fast time had gone. We'd stay up really late, in quotes, and then fall asleep confident in our coolness. And she actually got to go to sleep at a decent hour without making us all shut up 6 times in the middle of the night. Now that I'm older and value my sleep, I think she's a frickin' genius. When I was in kindergarten, all of my friends would go to Disney World and talk about all of the rides they went on. I was really jealous because I'd never been. My parents didn't want to pay for a plane ride from Massachusetts to Florida. Every day I'd cry and cry just begging to go. One day in the middle of the week, they just gave in and said, "Okay, we would go." I was psyched. We went on the horse that goes back and forth and we got necklaces. We also saw a lot of couches and chairs and other furniture. The next day in class, I told all of my friends that I went to Disney World yesterday. They were amazed that I only went in one day. Turns out we'd actually gone to Jordan's Furniture, and my parents told me it was Disney World. In short, my parents tricked me into thinking that Jordan's Furniture was Disney World. My realization about my parents came pretty early in my life. When I was very young, I came downstairs at 4 in the morning to witness my dad, half asleep and wearing nothing but his undies, placing presents under the Christmas tree while shoving the cookies we left out for Santa into his face. His reaction? Oh. A relative of mine tells her kid that if she behaves well at school for 5 days in a row, she can have 2 days off school. The kid has no idea that's the weekend. For a good portion of my childhood, I thought we were just eating a different brand of tomato sauce. Turns out my mum had been liquefying carrots and putting them into the sauce to get us more veggies. It took me years to know that tomato sauce should not be orange. My husband's mother would always put 1% milk in the 2% jug simply because his brother swore that he didn't like 1%. The brother never knew the difference. Mom, why did the milk expire 2 years ago? This happened to a family we knew. The mum spent months slowly switching the rest of the family from whole milk to skim milk. She kept the same jug and would mix up increasing portions of skim. Finally, one day the daughter noticed the year-old expiration date, gagged and spat milk all over the kitchen, screaming that the mum was trying to kill them all. On my 21st birthday, my parents took myself and my housemates out for an early dinner, so as not to interfere with the festivities we'd planned later on. At that dinner, my dad flipped my world upside down. When I was 10 and my brother was 7, we'd taken a family trip to the Liberty Science Center, which, for those of you not in the New Jersey area, is essentially a neat multi-story playhouse full of science-related activities designed for kids. They have an IMAX theater attached that plays interesting documentaries. For a while, they had a touch tunnel where you could crawl through an extended area in complete darkness, and several demonstrations on different floors with everything from insects to the classic shattering a banana frozen with liquid nitrogen routine. To my parents' credit, they had me interested in science from a very young age, so this was a real treat for my brother and I. However, since we were still 10 and 7, we couldn't stand to be stuck in a car for more than an hour without bickering with each other. After fighting almost the entire way there, my dad laid down the law. If I hear one more word out of either of you, I'm turning the car around. A deafening silence reigned over the rest of the car ride until we were literally pulling into the parking lot when one of us, I can't remember who, said something snarky, and my dad, true to his word, turned that car around and we drove all the way home. Fast forward to this 21st birthday at dinner, the story happened to be brought up, as I tend to use it as an example of how, while my dad was really cool, he was not one to F with. My dad then revealed a life-changing secret that only he and my mother had known. They'd never intended to actually drive all the way home after the long ride. They just wanted us to get the message. However, my dad misinterpreted some of the traffic signs and ended up back on the Garden State Parkway, which has few and far between opportunities to turn around, so he just took us home. The entire thing was an accident, but they played that off as intentional for the sake of their parental authority. They did take us back the following weekend because you bet your butt we were the most behaved children on the planet for the next few days. In short, I thought my dad was a stalwart authority figure who meant every word he said, but in reality, he's just really bad at reading street signs. When I was a kid, we had a pet bird, Bart the bird, and he could talk. For years, I recalled with great fondness talking to Bart, and Bart answering back. Well, not too long ago, I asked my dad what type of bird Bart was. Surely he was some form of parrot, and I just never put it together because I'd been so young. My dad then broke the news that Bart had never talked, that he'd stand not far off in the other room or a few steps behind me and talk for the bird. I don't think I've ever felt the carpet be pulled so quickly from under my feet. You don't know how many people I've told about Bart the talking bird. Every time we went to the hairdresser, they'd mess it up. At the time, I really preferred long hair, and they'd always cut it way too short and in styles I didn't like. Eventually, I decided that all professional hairdressers were huge screw-ups who didn't listen, and I was going to take matters into my own hands. I've been cutting my own hair since I was 15. I'm 23 now and actually pretty damn good at it. Just a few months ago, I was over at their place for dinner, and my mum casually mentions that she'd always told the hairdressers to ignore what I said and cut it in a certain way. I was floored. I'd lost faith in the entire industry. I'd had crappy hair for years and years between their crappy cuts and mine before I knew what I was doing. That stuff probably changed the course of my life in some way. As a kid, my best friend used to go on and on about how he couldn't eat the generic cereals. He had to have the name brand. how he could just taste the lower quality. Well, one night we were having a sleepover. I woke up pretty early in the morning and went upstairs to use the bathroom. In the kitchen was his mum filling the Fruit Loops from a bag of the generic stuff. She saw me, smiled, and said, "Shh." I never told my friend. That's awesome, and that mum is being economical and saving herself a great deal of needless whining. However, given the smarty little crap-eating brat that I was, you can bet that I would have been rubbing my friend's face in it starting immediately. As a kid, you were a better guy than I was. When I was like 3 or 4, I got a toy telephone car that lit up and said things when you pressed the numbers for my birthday. I played with it all day, and I didn't even question the fact that my mum didn't let me take it out of the box. 3 days later, I couldn't find it anywhere, and when I asked my mum, she told me that she'd had to return it to the store because it was infested with ants. Being a kid, I didn't think much of it, and just went back to watching Sesame Street or whatever. A few years ago, I told my mum that I still remembered that story, and she told me what had really happened. My family had just come over to the States from Nepal, and we barely had any money. My dad was getting a degree at the university, working a job and paying for our bills and his tuition at the same time. So it turns out my parents couldn't actually afford any presents for my birthday, but they wanted me to at least have something to play with, even for a little while. They bought me that toy so I'd be happy, and then had to return it a few days later. Apparently my mum left the room and cried for a solid hour after I'd asked her what happened to it when I was a kid. I had to hold back my own tears when they told me. In short, I frickin' love my parents. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. When I was about 5 years old, my aunt and uncle got full custody of me because my mother chose her horrible boyfriend over me. Over the next few years, I'd visit her on some weekends to see my siblings. As time went on, I saw less and less of her, until one day she just stopped coming over, stopped calling, and disappeared. No big surprise because she was a shady human being anyway. One day, during a rare moment of seeing her, she basically asked why I wasn't happy to see her. I went the F off about how she was a crappy mother for not only giving me away, but also completely abandoning me. My aunt did step in and say, well, she stopped calling and visiting because we told her to. Finding that out didn't fix anything between my mother and I, but until I was much older and realized my aunt and uncle did the best thing they could for me, I felt pretty betrayed. Wasn't really a bomb my mum dropped on me, but a bomb I unwittingly opened. I was trying to get a job at several places when I was 16. I was pretty tech-savvy at the time and genuinely thought I could get a job working a help desk for a power company, a bank, and a few other places. I started to check the mail every day to see if I'd gotten a letter, since I wasn't sure they'd send me a letter, email, or call. I got a few letters from the places I'd applied to, and I was excited to open them. They were bills of significant debt, all defaulted on. My mum had said she'd pay them back and close it. I believed her, so I dropped it. I didn't know how credit worked back then, and I didn't know what extremes my mother would go to. A few years later, several years after graduating and entering the workforce, I tried to get credit on my own and got flat denied by everyone. I got letters from collectors representing the companies that my mum had opened accounts with under my name. They said the bills were never paid on. I claimed identity theft and managed to get the responsibility shifted off myself and onto my mum after filing a police report and talking to several companies over the phones across the span of several months. All of them said that she'd opened the account in my name by claiming she was my wife. In short, my mum stole my identity as a kid and claimed she was my wife. I learned to hate Mother's Day. My favorite toys would go missing. Turns out they destroyed them because they made too much noise. My stepdad claimed he never had the right size batteries for my toys. Yeah, it's because your mom used them all up. My dad used to call me into the bathroom to look at his number 2. I was always shocked out of my mind. It looked like little stars and perfect circles and even dog bones. I couldn't figure out why my doo-doo always looked stupid. Turns out he was throwing dog food into the toilet and waiting for it to bloat up before calling me in. I'm glad to say I've inherited my dad's sense of humor. My mum told me she could see through walls. She always knew when I was playing and not trying to go to bed, so I believed her for years. Turns out my nightlight cast a very bright shadow on the wall, and she would use that to see if I was in bed or not. My parents would set the clock 2 hours ahead on New Year's Eve and then take my siblings and I out for dinner so we wouldn't notice, and then wind up going to bed at 10 instead of midnight. I recently found out at age 20 that the zebra my aunt purchased for her farm when I was a kid did not in fact die from being unable to handle the environment of upstate New York, rather it was trampled to death by her llamas. Don't mess with llamas. To clarify a couple of things, the original story wasn't that the zebra froze to death in a winter storm, but that it was chronically ill from the wet and cold weather and eventually succumbed to his illness. Also, I have no idea how she acquired said zebra. She had an ostrich too, and that thing was mean as hell. My mum used to hold me up to the arcade machines and let me believe that I was playing, even though it was just the demo and title sequence. I remember getting really frustrated that I'd die at the same part every single time. For years and years, my dad, a single parent, would make grilled cheese for me by toasting bread and putting cheese on it. It was cool. Years later, I discovered at one point, while my grandma was visiting, she attempted to make me a grilled cheese the normal way. Pan, butter, deliciousness. But my dad stopped her, saying, "No, then he'll know that that exists." Also, I was invited to Neverland Ranch as a kid, but my dad didn't let me go, nor did he even tell me I was invited. Lastly, I was in Cub Scouts, but only participated in local meetings, wondering why we never did campouts or anything. I just thought it was something our troop didn't do. Recently found out that there were campouts. My dad just thought they were all buttholes, so he didn't let me go. Or tell me that they existed. My childhood was unique. My first pet was a dog I named Sparky. I had him for about 2 weeks, then one day I came back from school with my dad telling me he'd run away. I looked for that dog and set up missing posters for weeks. Turns out they gave him back to the pound they adopted him from because we couldn't afford to keep him. I remember when I was a little girl, all I wanted was to see the movie Matilda. My parents wanted to just see the Nutty Professor. So they took us to see the Nutty Professor and told me that it was Matilda. I just kept waiting and waiting. It wasn't until the end of the movie that I realized my parents were jerks. I don't know who would want to go and see that solid C of an Eddie Murphy film over the pretty solid hit that Matilda was. But regardless, I think this deception probably crosses that line we talked about earlier, from white lie to just harming your child's trust. My mum, a few times when my brothers and I were young, would turn all the lights off in the house. She'd tell us to go get our sleeping bags and bring them into the living room while she put a couple of tents together. She'd then get candles and put them in a small pile and call it a fire. This little maneuver was called camping inside. We weren't allowed to watch TV or play any video games because we were camping. She read us Goosebumps stories and we played flashlight tag. It was always fun. Cut to when I was first starting out in the world, I was having financial trouble and was consoling my mother for comfort. She told me that she's been down that road and you always pull through. I asked her to explain. She said that when we were younger, sometimes she couldn't afford to pay the power bill, and that when it was apparent that it would be shut off, then she knew it was time to go indoor camping. She did that so that none of us would ever worry or think that we wouldn't be okay. That story made me smile. I love my mum. When I was 4 years old, we didn't have a car. My mum would pick me up from daycare and then we'd walk home. Whenever I said that I was too tired to walk anymore, my mum would say, "Okay, I'll give you some energy." She'd hold my hand and make a bzzz noise as if sending me energy. Then she'd ask me if I'd had enough now. I'd say yes and would keep walking. I love my mum. When I was a kid, my favorite cereal was Cap'n Crunch's Crunch Berries. If given the opportunity, I'd eat nothing else. So for years, my mother had me believing they were only available during Christmas. So about 6 years ago, I was in a store with my ex and I see them. I explained how much I loved them as a child and we should get some. Then I realized it was July. I got really excited and even regressed a little, I think. It was then gently explained to me that I'd been duped. I'm eating Captain Crunch Berries right the frick now though, so all's well that ends well, I suppose. I used to hate whole wheat bread. My parents convinced me that it was just part-toasted white bread so that I'd eat it. When I was a teenager, my grandma, who was suffering from stage 4 throat cancer, decided that she wanted to air out her secrets before she died. She filled me in that my childhood cat Charlie didn't die from old age like they'd told me, but her and my parents had put him down while I was at school one day. I was distraught. Looking back though, I can understand why they did it. Oh, and she also told me that Dad was married before my mum and I have a much older half-brother. It's been a deep, dark family secret forever. My parents still don't know I know. Maybe I should have been more upset about that than the cat. 15-year-olds are frickin' lame. I'm sorry to all those 15-year-olds out there. You'll see. My mum bought me Mega Blocks and put them into an old Lego container once. Bullcrap. What a monster. I used to have a cat when I was about 3 named Sia, and I loved her. She was a Siamese-looking cat, and I had her like 2 years. When I was 5, she got really sick while I was at school, and my parents took her to the vet. After about 2 weeks of asking my parents how Sia was, she finally came home. Now, Sia's going to be a bit pale because she's sick, and she might act a bit funny. Being in the hospital is scary. That's what my parents told me. So Sia came home, and she was a lot paler than I remember, almost greyish-white. She also climbed behind the sofa, refused to come out, and hissed at anyone who went near her. She eventually calmed down but didn't sleep in my room as per usual. She slept on the rafters in the basement instead. Turns out, I found this out about 6 months ago, my dad started up the lawnmower and Sia was somehow inside the lawnmower near the blade and, well, bad kitty times happened really quickly. They replaced Sia with one they found at the shelter, and the little moron that was me didn't notice. Oh, the ice cream truck just plays music when they're out of ice cream for the day. Don't bother going outside, sweetie. My dad once told me that fried calamari was just fried chicken to get me to eat it, assuming that I'd like it, and he could tell me afterwards, you ate squid and you liked it. Joke was on him though, it turns out I'm deathly allergic to squid. I'm also severely allergic to fish, shellfish, seaweed, and most mollusks. Basically, if it swims, it kills me, with the obvious exception of swimming mammals, though most of them are also deadly. What weird thing would you make socially acceptable if you could? Asking a potential employer what the salary for a position is before jumping through 50 hoops with the application and interview process, only to find out it pays garbage. Calling out customers for being rude. I had a job as a teller at a credit union back in college, and I'll always say the manager I had was one of the best I've ever worked with. I once had a lady who kept asking me for a new credit card and handed me her debit card. I looked on her account and said, there is no credit card, there's a debit card, which is what this is, but that's the only card on this account. I can issue you a new one with no problem, but if you want a credit card, you'll have to fill out an application. She was adamant that what she had was in fact a credit card. No matter what I told her, she said it was a credit card and demanded a new one. At one point she said, are you stupid or something? To which my manager overheard, pushed me out of the way and said, you will not speak to him that way, and if you're going to continue behaving this way, you're going to have to leave. I won't tolerate you speaking to my employees like that. I wish more managers were like her. I'm a guy and I get a lot of flack for complimenting people's clothing. I don't think it's weird, but apparently it means I must like men. If you've got nice shoes, I'm going to say they're nice shoes. As a woman who's dating a man who's very fashion-forward and compliments things like that constantly, I highly encourage this. Compliments from women about your clothes is one thing, because we compliment everything and your dog, but from a man, it just hits different. We should destroy the thought that the customer is always right. Draping myself in velvet. Complimenting other men. Being able to sit in silence with someone without it being awkward. People shouldn't feel obligated to come up with conversation, it makes interacting stressful. I don't believe in awkward silences. Talk about something when it comes to you and conversations will always feel more real and interesting. When you're able to sit in silence with someone comfortably, I feel it shows you enjoy their company. Me and my best friend sometimes do this. We order food a lot and find a deserted place, usually the roof of some building, and we just sit there eating. Most of the time we talk, but those moments of tranquility and peace are really nice. Best friend I ever had. We still don't talk sometimes. The narrator is probably a lot of people's worst nightmare when it comes to not being able to hold silences. You know that insufferable person who'll wait less than 10 seconds into a comfortable silence before asking a question to get the conversation started again? Hi, it's me. Being able to be honest about how you feel without being bullied or belittled. Being able to just wave or say hi to people you hardly know. There's nothing worse than an awkward 5-minute catch-up chat at the store with someone I haven't seen in years. Sitting. On the floor or anywhere really. Cashiers need to be allowed to sit. The fact that most places don't let them is a load of BS. If other people are at my house having fun but I'm tired, I just want to be able to go to bed. But they can stay and have a good time. My dad doesn't say anything at all, he just disappears. Later you'll find him watching reruns of CSI Miami in his room, munching on gummy candies. He does not care. Openly talking about your finances with other people. A lot of people don't realize they're underpaid because nobody talks about wages. It's so bizarre to me that it's a taboo subject. We all rely on money in some form, let's just discuss it. I just wanted to state that finances, in my view, include things like how much debt you have, what your rent and other bills are, how much you have saved, stuff like that. I can see how there'd be negatives to discussing your salary with coworkers or family, but in my opinion, the negatives brought up that I've read from the replies don't bother me. The people who'd be offended or have expectations of me are not people that I'd end up highly valuing their opinion. If I'm doing better than a family member or friend and they need help, I'll help them. But if they're jealous, greedy, or generally not supportive, then I don't need them in my life. People in the service industry should be able to tell a customer when they're being a butthole. My old boss from when I worked retail flat out told me on my first day that so long as I wasn't being a total jerk, He'd always have my back if a customer was being a butt, and I didn't bend over backwards for them. He banned a couple of people from the store over their antics while I was there, and it blew a couple of Karens' minds when he told them to shut up and act their age when they tried their usual screaming fest. I loved that job. I'd like to make it socially acceptable to tell employers that you're only in it for the money and it be a legitimate answer. What, am I supposed to tell employers that I've always wanted to work a part-time job and get yelled at by Karens just so I could make ends meet? Eating alone at a restaurant or a solo movie trip. I mean, sort of limited now due to the pandemic, but before COVID, when people would hear of me doing that, they said they felt terrible and how depressing it sounded. I was like, why? It's just another day for me. It doesn't feel weird or anything. It's quite nice to get away from constant chats and have a nice quiet meal while being out and about. Neutral facial expressions. People act like anything that isn't definitely a smile is some sort of insult. It's another reason to appreciate masks. What's the matter? Absolutely nothing. This is my face. Having your work ethic, not your butt-kissing skills, prioritized and appreciated, both in jobs and in school. Staying silent if you really don't have anything to say. Short naps at work. Wearing cloaks, Lord of the Rings style. Screw jackets. All of my homies wear medieval cloaks. I dig this idea. Outfits can be so boring. I want to go out dressed like the Mandalorian or something. Taking a social time out without having to smoke or occupy the bathroom. My workday is 6 to 8 hours, it's an open plan office, lunch is social, and I have at least an hour commute per day. That is at least twice my maximum social energy per day. Similarly, not being expected to socialize with coworkers during my lunch hour. I desperately need the alone time to recharge, but I'm sure people think I'm an antisocial butthole because I'll straight get up and walk out if someone comes into the kitchen while I'm there. I'll greet them quickly and be nice, but I have to get the frick out before the inevitable small talk starts or I'll lose my crap. Staying home when sick. I really hoped this pandemic would improve the mindset, but nope, people still think you're a lazy piece of crap if you stay home when you're sick. I've always genuinely gotten mad when people came to work sick. A long time ago, I was a restaurant manager, and I just didn't understand why my GM insisted that sick people come in and hack up all over the food. We were almost never truly understaffed. I moved to a corporate call support job, and I thought it would be better. Nope. People were afraid of losing their jobs, so they came in no matter what because it was expected, even when it resulted in exponentially more sick people, which led to a loss in productivity. We were a frickin' software company where every employee technically had full remote capabilities, yet it took a frickin' global pandemic to normalize working from home. Dressing however you want. Makeup, dresses, medieval cloaks, whatever you want, regardless of gender too. That'd be nice. I think people should be able to wear whatever they want as long as it covers things most people don't want to see. Just walk around in cosplay if you want to. I wish everyone felt comfortable to dress however they'd want to. Being awake late at night and sleeping all morning. I've been like this since I was a kid. Circadian rhythm is just backwards. I can't fall asleep before 3 a.m. I wish people didn't treat me like I was lazy or something. I'm a pretty productive guy. I just get my work done while you're all asleep. I do not understand people like you at all, sir or madam, but maybe if we occupy the same desk we can produce an epic amount of work from one centralized spot, because I get the vast majority of my work done before midday. 4-day work weeks. Staying completely silent in other people's company. I wish that people would stop conflating women not wearing makeup with being unprofessional. I worked in a place where a girl was told she looked unprofessional when she didn't wear makeup. Yikes. The IRS telling you how much you owe in taxes. The IRS actually wants to do this. They're blocked by lobbying from the tax accounting industry. In virtually every situation in America when you can ask, why aren't we doing this obvious thing that's obviously better, the answer is corporate lobbyists. Hell, the reason daylight savings time isn't permanent, i.e. we stop moving the clocks back and forward, is largely due to TV lobbyists who want it to get dark early so that we sit at home watching TV. Running in public to get to places quicker. Back when I actually went to the office in the city, I remember seeing this one woman a few different times running, and not in your typical running clothes, but in a business suit during your typical rush hour times. The first time I thought she must be late to something. A few more times and I thought, wow, this lady is always late. Finally, I just decided she must just like running to or from places. Being able to take a day off because you just want to, as opposed to having to come up with an excuse. For myself in the UK, there's a bit in the leave application for details, but everyone leaves it blank. No boss cares unless it might screw up a project. Wearing nicer clothes than normal for no reason. Yes, I'm usually in jeans and a t-shirt at work. Yes, today I decided to wear a suit. No, I don't have a job interview or have to go to court. Wearing shorts at work during summer. Why wear pants when you could be more comfortable? I worked in an office where shorts were allowed but not jeans. The CEO had some kind of weird anti-denim hang-up. No jorts and no denim skirts either. I quit after 3 months for many other reasons. Not wearing a bra. I feel like everyone notices when I don't wear one in public and other women give rude looks. I just want to be comfortable. Not being always productive and not devoting one's life to making money. Yes, siestas in the middle of the workday. Please. Capes. No capes. Although I will say that Director Krennic's cape was superfly. I would also accept Doctor Strange's flying cloak if you've come to bargain. Correcting other people's kids. Not physically, but telling them to quit their bullcrap if their parents aren't doing it. Yes, and also being able to comment on parents being negligent with correcting their kids in public settings like restaurants. If your kid is throwing food around and you do nothing to stop it, I want to hold you accountable without you making a scene, please. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Walking my pig on a leash. When my dog was a puppy, we met a guy walking his pig on a leash. My dog was so confused, he just rolled over and showed it his belly. Skipping. It's more fun and energy efficient than running. I sometimes do it when I'm alone because I like the way it feels. Probably readjusting your sack. I hate it when mine gets stuck in a weird spot, but I can't move it until I get home. Talking about our mental health issues. We all face some level of depression or anxiety. Why are we lying and pretending to be happy all the time? You know that thing we all do where we're walking and suddenly realize we're going the wrong direction or need to change direction, so we stop, pull out our phones, pretend like we read something, and then start walking off in a new direction? Yeah, I'd just start randomly changing directions on the fly. Is this actually a thing? I'd just turn around. No one gives a shot what I'm doing. I'm just some random walking down the street. Why would they care if I turn around? Men should be allowed to express emotions without being seen as weak. It upsets me to see people in pain due to things that aren't their fault. Going out in more costume-style clothing. I'm not talking about overpriced Halloween store crap either. I mean being able to walk around in full Victorian-era clothing, Jedi robes, or good pirate wear. I'm tired of looking normal, damn it. Introverts being allowed to skip parties without being judged. As wonderful as that would be, I don't think that would ever kill the FOMO for some of them. Personal feelings aren't likely to change that much based on how acceptable it is to skip a party. Frilly dresses for adults. Am I the only one? I loved wearing them at Christmas and Easter as a little girl. Now, I feel like I can't get away with it. Satin, lace, pastel-covered ruffles, puffy sleeves, embroidered flowers and ribbons, a skirt that flies out when you spin around, maybe even a corset. Looks silly on a grown woman, especially if everyone else is wearing blue jeans and t-shirts. I just sure miss dressing up like that. Classifying women not wearing makeup as lazy and normalizing a fresh face on women, even to formal events. Sure, it looks nice, but can't a lady just rock some nice hair and a fancy outfit the same way men do? I was going to write along the lines of wearing little to no makeup becoming more socially acceptable versus the way it's interpreted now. I hate the generic responses of, "Oh, you didn't have time? I have some cosmetics in my purse. Are you okay? You look sick." You know, all that usual stuff. Men hugging each other often and showing affection. I used to see this when I was younger, then I think as a society we just decided to label such behavior as gay. Not drinking alcohol at gatherings. Dressing for comfort over style. I want to live in a world where it's perfectly fine to show up at a job interview in a sweatshirt. The need to wear nice clothes is an arbitrary rule we created for ourselves. Women also being able to skip wearing anything on their torso. It sucks that in hot weather, men and kids can roam around shirtless, but a woman can practically get arrested in some places for having her chest on display. Bras and bikini tops are freaking uncomfortable, not to mention the rubbish tan lines. I mean, at least people have started to make feeding your baby in public less of an issue, so who knows? Maybe I'll be able to pull them out in a few years. As a flat-chested woman, this annoys me the most. Those fat old dudes who have bigger melons than me can walk around freely shirtless, but if I show some skin, suddenly I'm a predator of some sort. Mothers can't even naturally feed their babies without getting shamed. I hate the South. telling someone you're child-free or don't want children without being told, "You'll change your mind," and other related nonsense. Unfortunately, a lot of people find us odd or not real women for being uninterested in having children. It's not for everyone. Swinging around toy lightsabers when you're a teenager or adult. Abruptly leaving conversations that you don't want to participate in. For example, one could simply declare, "This bores me, goodbye," and then promptly depart. Going to the bathroom for 15 minutes. Let men drink sweet cocktails without being judged. Being asexual or aromantic. Uncomfortable silences. Why do we feel it's necessary to yak about BS in order to be comfortable? Being nice to kids. As a man, I'd just say talking to kids that aren't yours. Moms catch me just casually chatting with their kid and they get all defensive because I'm a stranger. It's tragic as a society that we live in constant fear and instill distrust in our children. I want to dance anywhere in public. No, I'm not on anything, I just love to dance. Not talking or smiling to anyone in public. It has nothing to do with you, people aren't happy all the time and sometimes I just want to get in and get out. Walking cats on leashes or in strollers. I walk my elderly cat in a stroller. She has kidney disease and likes to threaten birds. I'm determined to give her this beautiful retirement. Screw what other people think. Just being able to walk around wearing only your skin without people deciding that you're randy or an exhibitionist or whatever. Being free of clothes in the sun is an experience I wish everyone could have. Wearing cute childish stuff. People giving weird looks kinda ruins the fun. I personally don't think it's weird, but the majority of my country thinks it is. I'd make gay marriage legal in my country. Here in Hungary, it's an unaccepted thing. Saying the phrase, "I'm happy" or "this makes me happy." One time I made the mistake of saying that about my hobbies, and the person I talked to looked at me like I'd grown 2 heads. As adult people, it's frowned upon to make emotional remarks, and that shouldn't have to be weird if you want to share it. Besides, being or feeling happy is a disposition per se, and shouldn't have to relate to being an emotional talk. It's exhausting having to give explanations. Top hats and capes. Dumpster diving. As a society, we throw away so much, normalizing dumpster diving would save a lot of salvageable items from going into a landfill. No chit-chat as a social default. Man, this one just keeps coming up, huh? Again, I think I'm a villain to a lot of people who desire this. Maybe I'll just try shutting my pie hole next time silence hits. Not wanting to work hard. Not as in not wanting to have a job, but openly being able to admit that the prospect of working at least 35 hours a week for most of your life is insanely depressing and unappealing. Wearing a mask to not spread viruses. Requiring employers to post a salary on job posts. Everyone can stop wasting time this way. Plus, better chance at fair wages. A lot of things people seem to find weird that are actually harmless. Stimming, humming, hand flapping, preferring not to communicate verbally, enjoying quiet or being unintentionally loud. I guess I'd just like to normalize being polite. Let people be odd as long as they're harmless. For the past 6 years, I've been sleeping with him in exchange for discounts on our supplies and Outback Steakhouse gift certificates. People wearing masks. I love putting mine on so people don't see my face. Not wanting to hustle or make someone else rich. I don't want to put in 60 work hours so I can have a materially successful life. Dungeons and Dragons. It's not really as weird as people think. It's acting. We watch TV, movies, plays, it's not any different. And you're playing a board game at the same time. People really need to get over the whole satanic panic thing. It's not devil worship, and it's not really all that weird. It's a much more social activity and more mentally stimulating than binging Netflix or playing video games, and it's helped me make and sustain great friendships. A friend started DMing for a group of friends that I've never played before during the pandemic, and I've got to say it's the night of the week that I look forward to the most. But not just do stupid Zoom calls where we talk about COVID for an hour. Also, my character is part of my soul now. It's insane how quickly I connected to the guy. Men should be able to wear skirts and dresses. Sometimes we need some air down there and to look cute. And yes, I know kilts exist, but that's the Scots thing. Let people like what they like without being bullied for it. Not ironing our clothes. Like seriously, they don't really look worse if you don't do it, and if no one did it, we'd save so much time. Not shaving your legs. It's so wild to me that the assumption is that women should shave their legs because men think they'll look prettier that way. But men don't need to shave their legs because apparently women wouldn't think men would look prettier with shaved legs? Wearing the same attire every day. Not the same pair as the previous day, but the same type of shirts and pants. Carrying around stuffed animals. They make me happy. I used to work at restaurants, and some employees were allowed to take breaks to smoke. I didn't smoke, so I never got any breaks. Every now and then, I'd just go stand in the walk-in freezer to cool off after I'd been running around the restaurant. My peers didn't like that I randomly disappeared for 5 minutes every now and then. I told them it's my smoke break. So I feel like short 5-minute breaks should just be allowed even if you're not a smoker. Platonic cuddling. Doing things later in the day, getting groceries at 10 p.m. or spa appointments at 8 p.m. and able to do vacuuming in my condo at midnight without my neighbors complaining. Society is set up for a 9-to-5 life. I agree with everything you've said except vacuuming at midnight. That would make me so angry. Whether I like it or not, I have to be up early, and hearing someone vacuum at midnight is just a jerk move. Do the stuff that would affect others during normal hours and do the quiet stuff on your schedule. 4-day work week. Men should be allowed to call their male friends their boyfriends, as ladies can call her female friends her girlfriends. Gotta level that playing field out. What was a scam that someone tried to cheat the system with at your job? At my McDonald's, this guy came with his 2 young kids and got Happy Meals, and then called me over and said, "This cheeseburger has no meat," and demanded that he get another cheeseburger, and then one of his kids said, "Dad, you just ate it," referring to the meat in the cheeseburger. "Congratulations, sir, you just played yourself." This happened to me, but it was in a double deluxe burger. My mum went up to the counter with my burger and was like, you forgot the meat." Worked at Office Depot. The rewards program used to give a percentage of purchases back to the customer in the form of a gift card every quarter. One cashier at Office Depot decided to sign up for the rewards program under her name and scan customers' purchases throughout the day under her own account. She ended up accruing thousands of dollars in rewards in 1 quarter. This is with 1% back on most purchases. It was more than any other customer in the southeast region of the US. Needless to say, it wasn't very difficult for management to realize what had happened. Shortly after that incident, Office Depot switched up the rewards program so this couldn't happen again. Happened to a coworker. They shipped a guitar to a customer once, and the customer called in saying he'd never received it, demanding a replacement to be sent immediately or else he'd sue. Tracking the info, it said it was delivered and signed for, but delivery theft is still pretty common. On a whim, though, my coworker looked him up on Facebook only to find him holding the guitar in his profile picture with the caption, "My new guitar just arrived." Management sent him a screenshot of that, and he was never heard from again. A delightfully drunk man insisting that the mop he was carrying away was his. "You brought that with you on a winery tour?" "Yes." "I've developed wonderful skills in dealing with les inebriates." I gently and firmly reclaimed the much-beloved mop and sent him on his way. We used to have free food for happy hour. Just some deep-fried Cisco crap like chicken tenders or jalapeno poppers. So many people would come in, order a water, load up on the free apps and leave. We'd stagger bringing them out, 1 tray at a time for the whole happy hour. It was always the people who weren't paying for any drinks at all who had the stones to get upset and get free stuff when the apps weren't coming out in a timely manner. I used to work as a hostess at a popular wing place. Once we had a family come through, and when it was time to pay, they handed their server a Denny's coupon. The server was like, "This is for Denny's, not for here." And the customer said, "Oh, I just thought I'd try it anyways, you never know." Well, at least it sounds like they weren't unpleasant about it. Also, if you're going to do that, you can at least try and cover by saying, "Oh, I must have left the other one on the kitchen counter or something." Still, I appreciate how front up they were about it. They wanted nachos, but the queso was $2 cheaper, so they tried to order queso with the meat on the side, explaining this reasoning to the server with straight faces. They threw a fit when the server and then the manager explained that the queso was already mixed in one big pot and we weren't going to pick out the solid bits for one order, especially since it's not like it would make a difference in how it tasted. Naturally, they complained about all the food they ate. They didn't end up ordering queso or nachos, apparently that was a deal breaker. But my manager had a, "If you cleaned your plate, you obviously liked the food" policy, so they were ultimately unsuccessful in getting the refund they so clearly were gunning for. I scanned a shirt without looking carefully and it rang up at $16.99. The customer politely asked me to check the tag because it was marked $10. I apologized and took a look. The clearance sticker was placed in entirely the wrong place, leaving the regular price barcode completely exposed, so that's what the scanner picked up. I apologized again and explained that the tickets didn't match up, but we'd have someone run a confirmatory price check. That was the first item I'd scanned, so I was extra vigilant with all his other items, all of which had improperly placed clearance tickets. They were all men's big and tall sizes, but at least one of the clearance tags was clearly from a junior miss. Some of the items were already clearanced, but with a replaced tag for just $2 or $3 difference. I would have caught it eventually, but pointing out the scanning error is what tipped me off. Throughout the whole thing, the guy was unfailingly polite, so I kept thanking him for his patience while we ran price checks. He still bought $50 worth of stuff. Another favorite was when one of our known shoplifters, the kind who does it as a criminal enterprise, turned in a job application. We had her on camera stealing handbags earlier that same day. My favorite in my McDonald's restaurant are the people who don't realize our soda fountain is behind the counter and they ask for a cup of water. So we get them a cup of water and hand it to them. They realize they can't fill it with the soda they wanted, and then they go ahead and order a soda anyway. Best caught in the act moment ever. In retail, people cutting out a UPC for a cheap item and taping it or gluing it to a more expensive one. I mean, if you're gonna do that, don't use the UPC for a $50 item on a lawnmower. When someone tries to return an item after wearing it and there's a giant stain that they couldn't get rid of. To piggyback off this, I get customers all the time complaining about deodorant marks on clothing to try and get a discount on it. When we wipe it right off in front of them, they're always a little upset. Then I sometimes get customers who get their own makeup on a garment and try to get a discount. Former fancy pants hotel worker here. We have a strict no smoking in the hotel policy because A, it's city law, and B, old historic buildings. But foremost, the city law dictates that if you allow smoking in your business, the air quality has to meet this impossible standard. I'm not sure what the standard is exactly, but you can look up Mike Ditka's restaurateur and the smoking ban for details. Anyhow, even with a $300 fine detailed at check-in and also in-room, people would still try to smoke in the rooms and get away with it. If they didn't leave evidence, we couldn't charge them, but oddly enough, nobody was ever that smart. On one occasion, the room was rank with smoke, and the housekeeper found a pop can loaded with cigarette butts. We usually photograph, tag, and inventory these items because people would tend to dispute the charges. So when presented with the evidence, this one lady tells us she was smoking outside the building, ashing into her hand, and then carrying her ashes up into her room on the 14th floor and depositing all of the ashes into the tiny hole of the pop can. She unsuccessfully disputed her charges. FYI, the $300 charge is in place because we can't sell the room until the air quality is that of a room where someone wasn't smoking. With a good ozone machine, that might take a day or two. I think a super popular one that most people are probably familiar with would be, "Let me talk to your manager." This is especially common when you're simply doing your job as instructed, following rules and policies, and then you tell the customer something they don't want to hear. "My ticket says it expires on January 1st, 2014. Can I still use that today?" "No, ma'am, I'm afraid not. Since the ticket is expired, you won't be able to use it. You'll need to buy a new one." "What? Nobody ever told me I couldn't use the ticket just because it expired. This is ridiculous. You're trying to steal my money. Let me talk to your manager right now. They're going to let me use this ticket or I'll sue you." Oh yeah, on that subject, threatening a lawsuit is another popular one that people try all day long. Had a lady call our Pizza Hut claiming that we gave her hard undercooked wings that sent her daughter to the hospital and she wanted us to pay her medical bills. However, none of the 5 or 6 phone numbers she provided showed any orders for wings or anything else in our system or the nearest few stores. I don't know if she just expected us to give her thousands of dollars on hearsay. Working at the pool, I've had more than one person use, "Man, it's called free swim for a reason. It's actually called recreation swim, so, go pay." One day I was working with my dad and a customer told him he'd call his manager and get him fired because he's a good friend of his. My dad owns the store. He laughed and told him to never come back again. Another time, some guy tried to steal a banjo by putting it under his jacket. Unluckily for him, I was taking a break and looking at the cameras and I caught him. I went to confront him. He took the banjo and started rubbing it with his jacket, saying he was cleaning it, not stealing. To be fair, that's not a situation that any good improviser could easily explain away in that scenario. I think if there were an improv scene about a man trying to steal a banjo, there's a fairly good chance they'd come up with exactly this excuse in the scene. This was internal. I served at Red Robin for a while, and you could sign up for these cards called royalty cards, where every 10th burger is free. A couple of servers at my restaurant got themselves all fired at the same time for trying to game the system. They'd swipe the card for any table that didn't have one, and then apply the 10th burger to a table that paid in cash, so they could pocket the extra $10 or so. Red Robin monitors how often the cards are used. They were caught within 2 days. They'll argue with me about the size of a free birthday scoop, which, it says it right there. One of my old jobs had an online order system with a special instructions box. You wouldn't believe how many times people typed in "add bacon" or "double meat, extra cheese," expecting to get these things for free. They were always angry if you added these things to their ticket, and then they'd be like, "Well, I don't want those things if they cost extra." They'd always expect me to give them their already made sandwich with the extras, and nope, I remade them every time. I once saw a woman at a Longhorn's chain steakhouse walk out with an entire bowl of those small packaged mints. The hostess was in such shock, but by the time she walked out to say something, the woman was already driving off in her car. I used to work in a call center job. My job was to call customers' references. These are usually people that know the customer well enough, and we make sure the info we have on file is correct. 1 time out of 10, we'll get a mum or boyfriend or friend or aunt who'll put the customer on blast and tell us that they won't pay their bill. The customer will get cancelled. As per call center rules, we're not allowed to hang up on people or argue with them. The worst was when a customer would list 3 references, set up 3 Google Voice numbers, and then answer the phone on all 3 numbers and just attempt to change their voice to give themselves a reference. And I had to sit and listen to it the whole time. Ask them questions while they plug their nose and try to pass themselves off as a different person. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Worked at Starbucks for a while, had this one guy always try to scam free stuff. So to get a venti coffee, it's like $2 or $3? And the first thing in the morning, we don't have much cash in the drawers, maybe $50, seeing as it's the start of the day. So this guy comes in 5 a.m. or 5:30 and orders just a large coffee. But you see, he only has $100. Me being the nice, customer-friendly girl I am, I just offer to him for free, not realizing what was happening, and send him on his way. It's not his fault we don't have the change for him, right? Then he tries it again the next day. I mean, really? Are you so dumb that you wouldn't think I wouldn't notice it? This time I say, "Oh, let me get the manager so we can make change for you." "Oh, now you suddenly have a $5 bill in your car." "Sure, buddy." I work in a fairly high-end restaurant. Apparently, it's extremely common for people to pull a piece of their own hair out and put it in their food so they don't have to pay the bill. Back when I was in college and worked at 7-Eleven, the paper food stamps were still the norm. EBT wasn't around yet. We kept a stack of $1 food stamps in the register for making change on larger denominations, but any change less than $1 was given back in coins. We sold some small candies for 5 or 10 cents a piece, and people would come in over and over, buy a candy with a $1 stamp, get their change, leave the store, rinse and repeat until they had enough change to buy alcohol. Here in the UK, it's actually illegal to give cash change for food stamps for exactly this reason. Like yours, our food stamp system is not valid for purchases of alcohol or tobacco. My buddy works at the local Taco John's. Whenever someone pays with the exact change, he just cancels the order and pockets the cash. This is why a lot of fast food places have a little sign now that says if you don't get a receipt, your order's free. I used to work in medical billing. This one lady called to make an appointment and she had no proof of insurance. She insisted she had insurance and was unwilling to pay anything at her appointment. We said that if she had her insurance agent call up our office with her policy info and confirm that she was insured, we'd accept that. So she hangs up, then within minutes she calls us back from the same number, her cell phone, and pretends to be an insurance representative. My coworker got that one and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, are you calling from the patient's cell phone?" The lady hung up that phone very quickly, and we never heard from her again. People at grocery store self-checkout who scan something cheap but then put something way more expensive but the same weight into their bags. Bonus if you just ring up the wrong kind of vegetable. For example, my grocery store charges more for peeled onions than unpeeled of the same type, but they look exactly the same. Lots of greens look very similar. It would be very hard to catch unless the cashier was looking directly at you, and then it can be claimed as an honest mistake. I guess I have a story about the opposite that always blew my mind. My parents live out in the country, and there's a super tiny McDonald's on the highway closest to them. They went to grab a quick bite, and they were about 15 minutes from home at this location, so they ordered inside and ate inside as well. My mum ordered chicken nuggets, bit into one when she was sitting down and realized it was pretty cold. So she returned it, they gave her a freshly fried sixer, and she was happy. 5 to 10 minutes later, a lady came running inside yelling at the top of her lungs that someone had bit into one of her nuggets. Instead of checking Mum's used box of nugs, they just threw it in the next drive-thru bag. She still laughs her butt off about that. Oh man, we had a waiter keep used gift cards, and then when a family would try and pay with a gift card, he'd swap them so it looked like it didn't work, and the family would pay or get their meal comped, and he'd walk away with the gift cards. He then sold them on Craigslist or used them when people paid in cash and kept the money. My boss called the number on Craigslist who was selling our cards and asked who he was. He was fired the next day. I work in IT. Some guy wanted to get some free prints, so he asked for a refund on a bunch of pages, saying he didn't issue the print request. Aside from that being, not the greatest reason, since you had to log in to submit requests, we could literally track his iPhone via MAC address as he moved across campus connecting to our Wi-Fi spots. It just so happened that he had moved from his room to the printer location and back right before he made the request. I will say there was a moderate to good chance of this guy's plan working with a less attentive staff member, so good on you for being diligent. Worked at a movie theater, and we had a guy who'd purchase an IMAX ticket and use his royalty card to get the points. Usually he'd purchase it at a kiosk, and I kid you not, he'd come asking for a refund less than 5 minutes after the purchase. How the loyalty system was set up was that the points would not be refunded, so he did this a few times just to get a free movie coupon. Pretty easy to catch it because we noticed the time the ticket was purchased after we refunded it. Sent it up the ladder to corporate, his loyalty account was cancelled and they changed the system to refund points as well. Former Starbucks employee here. Customer orders drink, barista makes drink, customer says it doesn't taste right, so we have to remake it, but they keep the first mistake drink as well and give it to a friend who just happened to not order anything. Finally, they now have a policy. To remake the drink, you have to also give up the first mistake drink. Also, ordering just espresso shots over ice and then filling up the rest with creamer at the craft bar. There's a special circle in hell for you people. I work in a book chain here in Ireland where we use the euro. A lot of our magazines come from the UK where they use pounds, so they'll have a price in pounds on the cover. I had one woman absolutely lose it at me when the price came up as €6 when the price on the cover said £4. She insisted on paying the pound price because she happened to have a £5 note on her, but asked to see my manager at 9 PM on a Saturday night when I told her we couldn't sell her the pound price because we add Irish taxes, cost of doing business, to that price. People are just the worst. I'm not really hungry. Can I order off the kids' menu? Sure, I'm in a good mood and I've had a good day so far. Why not? I drop off the check. Isn't the drink supposed to be included in the price of the kids' meal? The gym I work at has a check-in computer that none of us employees ever check. We know everyone by name, and maybe every once in a while we check memberships. It's not our job, but the job of the manager who's completely absent. If someone needs to pay, a message pops up after check-in that they need to pay, but it gets deleted when the member hits enter. So I checked this one guy on a random whim. He hadn't paid his membership in over a year. Next time he came in, he scanned his card and hit enter. I was standing behind him and said, "So for a year you've been pretending to scan in and all the while you know you haven't paid your membership. Man, if things are so bad for you that you can't afford $30, I'll gift you a charity membership through our poverty program. Are you interested?" He said, "No, here's $30, I'll pay from now on." About 2 months later, he stopped coming in. What I hated was that he was a friend at that point. Yeah, some friend. Steal from where I work and then smile and hug me every time you come in? Liar. Creep. Get the frick out of my gym. I used to usher at baseball games and fans would buy cheap tickets off StubHub, then check our official site before the game on their smartphones. They'd pick the blue dots in the first few rows that hadn't sold yet and move up there to watch the game. Not bright since we had access to the same info as them. I work at Starbucks. Yes, I understand how overpriced it is. If I didn't work there, I'd never order it. Anyways, we had a regular who came in every day and was huge and was a very cheap person. If you bring your own cup, you get a 10-cent discount, and he always said, "Don't forget my discount." It's 10 cents, dude, whatever. He recently told one of my partners that his previous drink was made wrong and that a different partner, let's call her Julie, had said he could get a free one. Julie wasn't there at the time, so he went ahead and gave it to him. Came to find out that Julie had never said that and hadn't even talked to him. So about a week went by and one of my supervisors, let's call her Wendy, asked him about it and said, "Well, Julie's in a lot of trouble for this because she isn't authorized to give away free drinks without letting someone know." And he said, no, it was, he gave another name. And she said, "Oh, really? Because they're the one who was telling me this. So next time, make sure to try your drink before you leave so this doesn't keep happening." He was so nervous he dropped his lid twice and kept stuttering. Look, if you can't afford it, don't buy it. I only say that because he adds a million things to it and gets mad that we charge him for it. The worst was, I can barely taste any Crown, man. and they put the drink back on the bar like I'm going to top it up. You saw me pour the frickin' jigger. I'm not going to give you free booze, especially after the tip you just forgot to leave me. Family of 4 orders one entree for all 4 of them to share and keeps asking me for free bread baskets. Which, I'm not spending any more time on your cheap butt because 1, I know you won't tip me well, and 2, if you're that broke, why come to my restaurant when you could just get 30 items on the dollar menu at some fast food joint for the one dish you're buying here? I work as a barista, and sometimes someone will come up to me and tell me that their drink was made wrong earlier and the manager told them they could come back for a free one later. But they never have a receipt and they can never remember which manager they spoke with. It's always super obvious that it's a scam and they always just leave when I offer to grab a manager. I love it when people try to get free stuff at hotels. I was traveling with this guy and he thinks he's a god. I got a free upgrade because I had status with the hotel. My companion did not and absolutely blew a gasket. He then stood there for like half an hour trying to get the free suite. Finally, a big group arrived and they blew him off. Same day next morning, he began negotiating again. Finally, they sold him an upgrade for like $15. The best part is that this was at a Fairfield Inn, so we're not talking about much of a difference. Gentlemen, what did your girlfriend's dad do to establish dominance? I found out my father-in-law was a high-ranking official for the Secret Service in Poland during the Soviet era. He doesn't have to do anything more to terrify me. I married her, though. Best decision I've ever made. She's much prettier than I am. We're 16, talking out in front of her house at 8 p.m., very innocently. He comes out and starts mowing the lawn, making eye contact the whole time. To be fair, it's nice and cool at 8 p.m., and mowing in the midday heat is a pain. Plus, mowing in the morning sucks due to the grass being wet from dew. My ex-wife's father, actually a pretty cool guy, one year at Christmas, I was trying to open a package that my nephew had gotten, and my father-in-law said, "Just use your pocket knife." I said, "Sorry, I don't carry a pocket knife. I'll go get one from the kitchen." He said, "What kind of man doesn't carry a pocket knife?" I sat there for a minute, trying to think of a response, feeling pretty low. He started laughing and said, "Sorry, my wife's dad asked me that one time and I've been waiting to use it on you." My ex-wife and I are still on pretty decent terms. That gentleman passed away recently. It was a really sad thing, knowing that he was gone. He introduced himself, told me about his profession, that of a surgeon. Then during the conversation, he slipped in the line, "Oh, and if you get hurt, I can give you personalized care, or finish you off. It all depends on how you treat my daughter." Oh, and he had some crazy eyes too, always wide open. He's blind. He asked if he could feel my face to get an idea of what I looked like. It was awkward, but my girlfriend Alice was smiling brightly, so I felt a little proud. Then he stepped back, shrugged his shoulders and said, "You can do better, Alice." He's my father-in-law now and one of the funniest and smartest men I've ever known. My fiancée was in a horrible relationship before we dated. Her dad met me with joy after I genuinely smiled and shook his hand when we met. Now we golf, fish, and hunt together when we can. My dad passed away last year, and hanging out with her father is always a pleasure. All my girlfriend's dad had to do was stand up. I'm 5'6" and he's 6'1". My sympathies, short king. That sort of thing shouldn't matter too much, but I say this knowing that if the man who sired my girlfriend was a full 7 inches taller than me, I would be intimidated. He sat down on the couch next to me shirtless and just wearing long underwear and said, "Let's play a game called See How Uncomfortable We Can Make Trevor." My name isn't even Trevor, by the way. Then he proceeded to take me up to his bedroom and tried to coerce me into smoking Mary J and doing fungi, even though I told him I'd never done any substances, never wanted to do them, and was expecting to be tested as I was trying to get into the military. Eventually he backed off, but he was always pretty weird. We got quite drunk the first night we met. I took his side over hers in a debate they were having. He grabbed my face and kissed me on the lips. Years later, walking her down the aisle, he said to me, "She's your problem now." In short, I have an awesome father-in-law. The best part is, a year later, we didn't live on the same continent as her parents, hence the gap, we went back and I met her sister for the first time. Drunken night again, girlfriend and her sister were arguing who was dad's favorite, and their dad shouted, "Out of everyone here, my name is my favorite." So I got up, walked over, grabbed him by the face, and kissed him on the lips again. He actually didn't do anything himself to terrify me, but my girlfriend did it for him. She told me all about how her grandfather, his father, was a legitimate lumberjack and how he, her dad, was pretty much one as well. He chopped wood for fun, and at one point his arms were so big that he had to cut the sleeves off his flannel shirts. He also used to bow hunt, camp for days, and works out a lot. He's the manliest man I personally know, which is a stark contrast to me. He's a really nice guy and has only made me feel slightly uncomfortable with his sarcasm. Wait a minute, wait. Is he single? Yeah, he's on the dating app Timber. He was never around. It actually freaked me the F out. He was like a ninja. I was always checking in the shadows, waiting to see if he'd spring out. My girlfriend's older brother and her dad cornered me at a party, and her older brother said if I ever did anything to upset her, he'd suck the manhood right off me. He's not gay. The party was for his baby's baptism. Told me to eat more the second time we had dinner together. Real hard guy, right? The first time I met him, I gave him a carton of Mao's favorite brand of cigarettes. He's Chinese and a smoker. We can't communicate much in English or Chinese, but I'm pretty sure he likes me. Her mother, on the other hand, has done everything short of putting a 12 gauge in my mouth and making me promise I'm not wasting her daughter's time, including pressuring me to buy a car, even though I live like a 15-minute walk from my office and public transport is as fast as driving. Shot me, point blank, with a Nerf weapon. No warning, just at dinner I was having with their family. All he said was, "You try any funny business, you'll get the or nothing." Background: I'd recently started dating my girlfriend and had met her dad one time. I'd left a bottle of whiskey at my girlfriend's house. She was out of town for the weekend, so I asked if I could sneak in and grab it. I came in and yelled to see if anyone was home, and no one replied. I went upstairs to grab my bottle, and in bursts her dad with his hands raised, asking who I was and saying he was a judo champion. He then realized who I was, and we said an awkward goodbye. He pulled me into the laundry room and made me help him fix the washing machine. It was odd, but after he realized that I had a general grasp of how to use tools, he seemed to lighten up. Also, asking him to help me replace the radiator in my first car was a plus. Love that man to death. Too bad his daughter's a psychopath. Yeah, I'm breaking up with you, but I'd like to negotiate joint custody of your dad. This guy clammed up, basically acted as if I wasn't there, and if I did talk to him, I got single-word answers. This is an actual conversation when I was stuck in a car with him. So, what do you do? Sales. Been doing that a long time? Yes. How many years? 30. Are you retiring soon? Yep. What are you planning to do when you retire? Florida. Where in Florida? West. So, like, Tampa? Yep. My girlfriend got a text the next day from him saying that I'm a great guy and he's happy she's dating me. I was 17 at the time and was really into his 16-year-old daughter, so he sat me down at his kitchen table for what I thought would be a talk. Instead, he pulls out a length of rope and demonstrates step-by-step how to tie a proper noose for hanging someone. Dated a girl back in high school who took me to her grandparents for a family reunion-type meal. Sometime after the dinner, her grandfather took me outside to talk and we started walking towards his workshop. So he opens the door and suddenly I'm staring down the barrel of a cannon. Not a model, not a toy, a fully functioning Civil War cannon surrounded by all manner of historical weaponry. Muskets, rifles, swords, bayonets, battle axes, and even a suit of armor. You name it, the old boy collected it. Needless to say, I knew right then and there that Gramps didn't F around and I probably shouldn't be doing anything to really annoy his granddaughter. I once came to a girl's house to pick her up for a date in high school, and her father answered the door and said, "Come in." So I followed him inside to discover the dining room table was covered in disassembled firearms, and he casually sat back down, resumed oiling and assembling everything, looked up and said, "So, what are you kids up to tonight?" This is as far as a dad can go towards opening the door with a loaded weapon without actually, doing that. Loving the friendly tone that he set as well. He broke my rear window with a cricket bat for taking his daughter on an amazing date that made her happy. She was supposed to have an arranged marriage. He's from Bangladesh. Shook my hand real firm and asked, "Hello, are you effing my daughter in your apartment?" No introduction, wouldn't let go without an answer. I'm really tall and he's a short, stocky wrestler. 14 years later, we're still together. It was suggested that I put my answer here, so I will. I believe she interrupted with, "Dad," and we kept a firm grip. We locked eyes, silence for a few seconds, and I said, "Pleased to meet you, sir." He said nothing. I knew that he knew. We both knew. He shows me that he knows how to run and tune large industrial equipment all the time, and I don't mind because it's actually interesting as F. Watching a movie with my girlfriend. I'm wearing my Alabama hoodie and he saw it. We were in the basement and she got a text from him which was a picture of a bed with all Alabama covers, pillows, and stuff with the caption, "When you're ready for a romantic night with your cousin." I took the hoodie off and left in shame after that. He made me a bet. If I could catch 3 footballs while his daughter was covering me, I'd have his respect. Not the strangest bet I've made, but whatever. I ran 3 different routes for each one. Caught the first 2. Last one, I didn't know this about my girlfriend, but she's a huge Deion Sanders fan. Ball goes up, she catches it, and in the process elbows me in the face and gives me a black eye. Why am I walking away from this convinced she let you catch the first 2 and she's done this to multiple men? He told me he worked for the Ministry of Defense, that his job was very high security clearance and potentially dangerous. Basically portrayed himself as kind of a big deal spy, and he'd published some papers on counter-terror methods, so at least it kind of tied together with his academic interests. I never really found out what his actual job was or if he was bullcrapping me. But I do know that his daughter didn't know much more than I did, and she was unable to legally declare his income for the purposes of student finance assessments, which does kind of support the idea that his salary isn't supposed to be a matter of public record. My father-in-law left her when she was a child. It was a real power play on his part, in my opinion. Back in 2009, my then-girlfriend's dad joined us at a college party and walked up to me wordlessly, grabbed my drink and chugged it in its entirety before handing the can back to me. He's a funny guy who was fond of me. It was mostly an ironic gesture of dominance. Kind of a joke? Joke's on him though, that drink was a bona fide, cafe-laden 22-ounce Four Loko. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Literally none of the girls I dated had dads, either by death or divorce. I wonder what that says about me. Dad cleaned a 9mm in front of me. That said, I think he already knew that my dad was a cop and he figured I thought weapons were cool, which was true. I truly thought he was trying to relate to me. In hindsight, I guess not. He was never a jerk, always neutral and friendly. Korean war vet and nuclear engineer. He had mad tech knowledge of his hobbies. When I was 18, I went over to my girlfriend's house for dinner, in rural Montana, to meet her parents for the first time. My girlfriend knocks on the door, her dad answered the door with a 12-gauge, looks me dead in the eye and says, "So, you're the guy who's been effing my daughter." Girlfriend shakes her head and walks into the house, leaving me on the porch with her dad. After about 4 seconds of me trying not to pee myself, he laughed and told me he had been waiting 18 years to do that. I guess it had been a running joke in the family that he was going to meet whatever boy she brought home at the door with a shotty, and I was the first one she had brought back. I actually found it pretty funny once my heart rate settled to below heart attack levels. They're a pretty liberal family of artists who really seem to respect their children's rights to do whatever with dating, and I ended up living in a teepee in their backyard for a summer. It's still joked about 20 years later. While his daughter and I are no longer together, we dated for about 4 years, I'm still very close with her and her family and stop by whenever I'm in the area. Haven't even exchanged names yet. The guy puts his finger on my chest, I look down and of course he flips it up into my face. Laughs so hard. I wasn't expecting it, but that's just who this guy is. The first time I ever went to my girlfriend's house, her dad busted open the board game, Ticket to Ride, and proceeded to utterly destroy me. As he stole the last possible way for me to get from New York to LA, he looked me in the eye. He knew what he was doing. 5 years later, I've still never beaten him. He showed me pictures and told stories of his family and Chairman Mao together. Pretty sure they could have made me disappear. This is what my dad did when my sister's boyfriend came home for the first time. Just sitting at the table, sharpening the kitchen's knives. I still don't know if it was a coincidence. My dad says it was, but my mum and sister make a really good point. He had never sharpened knives for the kitchen before. The story of my dad waiting for him sharpening knives has been told around the whole school for a couple of years. First time sleeping at their house. At breakfast in the morning, come up the stairs and he's cooking bacon in red tighty-whities. He sat on the couch and watched house remodeling shows on HGTV while eating bags of candy. My dad told my boyfriend that he reminds him of the song Rosalita by Bruce Springsteen. It's about a no-good, dirt-poor musician sleeping with the guy's daughter and convincing her to sneak out of the house. See, that one wouldn't have worked on me because I'm an uncultured yob who can't name any songs by their title and who also doesn't really listen to any of them deeply enough to understand their meaning. So that's going to go over my head, Dad. My father-in-law held some state title for boxing state champ in his home state back in the day. The first time we drove over to see him, he was drunk and had a huge cut across the bridge of his nose. Apparently, he had beat the crap out of 3 20-something-year-old bullies the night before when they decided to jump him at the bar. His 70-something-year-old dad was mugged in his own home one time. My father-in-law found the guy who did it, followed him inside his house and broke his knees and elbows. He then proceeded to beat the crap out of the guy to the point of brain damage. In his words, if they can't talk, they can't identify you. The guy is chill as F every time I'm around and thanks me every time I see him for getting his daughter out of the hellhole they lived in. But I know for a fact if I ever break her heart, he'd fricking bury me. If I ever leave, it'll have to be leaving the country. That said, he's actually a super cool guy who's never given me trouble for a second. He'll call me up out of the blue and thank me for taking care of his daughter. Because he knows if she wasn't with me, she'd probably have ended up with one of the buttholes she'd been dating around there. My ex-father-in-law never did anything to really establish dominance. He shook my hand and looked at me and asked how I was doing. About 7 months later, when she was my girlfriend, we went and told him and her mother that she was pregnant, but we'd already started saving extra money and had a plan for when the baby was born. This was in 2002. He once again shook my hand and thanked me for actually being a real man. Eventually, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and we moved in with them so we could keep a better eye on him. I ended up with not only another father figure like my grandfather, but a best friend. We did everything together and had a lot of fun. We'd pick on each other so much it could easily get out of hand, much to the rolling of eyes of our respective wives. He went missing a couple of times, going for a walk and getting turned around, and then went for a drive and got lost. I was terrified but kept my composure and didn't stop looking until we found him hours later. He was a stereotypical Texan with lots of weapons, cowboy boots, and hats, but with a heart the size of Texas itself to match. As a fun fact, when his daughter, my wife, ended up cheating on me, which led to separation and divorce, she thought it was okay to bring the new guy around a couple of months after our daughter and I moved back near my family. My old father-in-law excused himself and came back with one of his weapons and simply proclaimed, "You're not Paul," and the guy actually peed himself. He told me about it later on the phone, cracking up, and he said, "I'm not as far gone as they think sometimes." And he told me that I'll forever be his son. I miss that old Texan cowboy. I flew overseas to meet my wife's family and ask for her hand in marriage. Made reservations at one of the fancier restaurants in town and asked him to meet me there for a talk. I should add that I was unemployed and completely broke. He pulls up in a BMW, tires screeching, and tells me to get in. I protest that we have reservations and he says to forget about them. He takes me to a really simple coffee shop, says that I don't need to impress him with fancy stuff. I tell him that I love his daughter and will always make sure that she's happy. He just looks at me for a long time, not saying anything, and finally says, "I don't know you, but I know my daughter and she's really smart. So many guys wanted to marry her and she turned them down. If she sees something in you, then I'm all for it." We shook hands and then we drove to the supermarket so I could help him haul a crap ton of groceries. My wife and I have now been married for 15 years, and he's always been a complete gent to us. Even though I showed up in his city completely broke and jobless, lived under his roof and ate his food, he never once made me feel that he was doing me some kind of favor or that I was anyone but a valued member of his family. And this despite the fact that he has a nasty temper and never holds his tongue with anyone else. I worked my butt off and got back on my feet, and my wife made a big leap in her career as well, and eventually we moved back to the States. He continues to be my ideal of what a real man should be. I hope to deal with my own daughter's husband as honorably as he's done with me. My father just happened to be cleaning his weapons and trying out his bore sight when I brought my boyfriend home for the first time. A table full of rifles and shotties. My boyfriend's reaction was, "Oh, neat," and they talked about the weapons for an hour. They went without me to a blacksmithing festival recently. I think all I did was bring home a friend for my dad. I live in Langley, Virginia. The other thing that lives in Langley is the CIA. A girl I asked out in my freshman year of high school had her dad drive us to the mall. No biggie, I'm a fairly confident person and there wasn't much of a plan to fool around at the mall. All part of his plan, I'm sure. Anyway, we get into his pickup truck and I'm in the back. The guy's wearing a navy dress blue uniform. I see he's a petty officer. I know insignia because I was a Sea Cadet. I was idly curious and wanted to make small talk so the guy likes me, so I check out his insignia when he turns around and talks to me. Red chevrons and a trident. The guy was a frickin' Navy SEAL. Never mentioned it, but you could tell he knew that I knew. Subtle yet effective. I give this boyfriend scaring method an A+. Yeah, the whole FBI or CIA agent father is one thing, but you still never know if that person has handled a weapon in conflict in their life or if they're some kind of agent or HR administrator for that organization. This guy was about as dangerous as a man can be. I would be fascinated to know if he managed any conversation more than a squeak after that. My wife, or girlfriend at the time, is Japanese, so we flew to Japan so that I could meet her dad and ask for her hand in marriage. At dinner, he pulled out the whiskey and beer. Turned out to be a drinking contest where I had to match him drink for drink. The problem is that I'm 6 feet tall, have 25 pounds on his butt, and I'm Mexican-American. Insert stereotypes here. 3 hours later, he was blotto, passed out, while I was at the mini-mart buying a 6-pack to drink on my walk back to the hotel. That night, I became a family legend. She had 2 mums. It was quite awkward when they both tried establishing dominance. Gay dude here, but I'm quite a bit more masculine than my fiancé, so I'm going to count myself in for this question. I think it's also a good story for its contrast with all the weapon-toting, axe-wielding knife sharpeners in this group. The first time I met my then-boyfriend's parents, his dad invited us along to the opera with them. I'm from a blue-collar family and had virtually zero clue what was going on and could hardly understand anything. It was a pretty mind-boggling experience. Then he took us out for a $400 dinner and insisted I have a really good couple of scotches after. I was like, damn, I hope your son doesn't expect to keep living like this because I'm poor as F in comparison. He didn't. I don't play that silly game, neither did she, and thankfully, neither did he. It was, you seem like a nice guy and I trust my daughter's judgment about you. None of the nonsense of scaring the daughter's boyfriend that crappy dads like to do. When did you wreck someone who completely underestimated you? I was at a conference when I was about 24 or 25. As I was waiting near the front of the room, I was approached by a guy I'd never met who said something like, "Son, let me give you some free advice. You want to be successful in this industry, pay attention to the next presenter." I was the next presenter. There is a classy or thoughtful way to do this, and this D-bag, condescending way to do it. I promise this guy was not trying to be helpful. He was trying to be an awesome industry insider who could talk down to people. There was a great internship posted on my law school job board. I applied, did all the right steps and stuff, didn't even get an interview. 6 months later, a similar offer is posted, and I apply again. This time, someone from my school's career office calls and says, "We can't send someone with your credentials to that prestigious employer because this is a really important relationship for the school." I apply on my own, get the interview, and get the position. The school finds out I got the internship, wants to set up a meeting to make sure expectations are set correctly, and I politely tell them to pound sand. Now I have a full-time job with that company. I am underestimated every Friday at the arcade. Just because I'm 30, slightly chubby, and dressed in a suit, it doesn't mean that I can't beat a couple of teenagers' butts in Dance Dance Revolution. My girlfriend's dad was helping me tune up my truck. He's a real domineering type of guy and likes to be bossy, so I was just letting him, quote, educate me on vehicle maintenance. Towards the end, I was sitting in the truck while he plugged the wires back up. He wanted me to turn it over, and nothing. He tried again, and I turned the key again, nothing. At this point, I hopped out and without a word plugged the wires correctly into the cap and started the truck no problem. To this day, I'm the only person he doesn't try to educate and boss around. In short, Google is a great friend. I'm blonde with blue eyes, 6 foot tall, and I live in the US. I speak fluent Japanese and work in the automotive industry. It's strategic to send me to meetings with Japanese executives, and at some point during the meeting I invariably begin speaking Japanese. Immediately, everyone loses their mind. What constitutes losing your mind in a serious high-level Japanese business meeting? Because TV has taught me that those things are pretty stony-faced, and I'm imagining the reaction being a few seconds of slightly surprised blinking. But then again, I'm only going off a media stereotype, so please let me know if something else would go down. I got told by some of my teachers not to apply to top UK universities because I wouldn't get in. I got into UCL and I'm doing just fine. Take that, you pencil-membered teachers. Same sort of thing happened to me. I was an above-average student, minded my own business for the most part. Needless to say, the guidance counselor had no idea who I was because I was never in the office for any reason. I was a good egg. She looks at my target schools, it was fricking UMass and a few smaller options. Not exactly shooting for the moon. But nope, she was like, "No way that will happen, are you joking? Have you considered 2-year community school?" Playing Trivial Pursuit at Christmas with my ex-girlfriend's family. Most of them and their partners are teachers with a couple of college professors thrown in. They looked down on me as I worked in a manual labor job. I won and then drank all the Baileys. I hope the end of this was more of a, "You have won our respect. Come and drink with us as an educated man," and not, "Frick you, motherfuckers! I won! I'm gonna drink me some Baileys," before crapping into the pipes they were definitely smoking. I'm pretty laid back. I wear business casual clothes to work, like nice dresses, flat shoes, but no suits, perhaps heels now and then. I introduced myself to a new employee in our department that works right next to mine. I realized his attitude was a bit condescending as we talk, and as I start to walk away, he asks, "Are you one of the work-study students?" I smiled and realized he thought I was a student worker, and that explained his attitude. I just laughed and said, "No, I'm Dr. Damsel, but it's great that you think I look young enough to be an undergrad." My girlfriend used to call her uncle or other relatives to hang up lamps and do other related stuff like drilling holes in our place. She did so because she thought I had no idea how to do that. One day, I told her, "Now I have to do all of that. I should have kept it safe and secret." I was at a prestigious wrestling tournament when I made it to the finals. The guy I was wrestling in the finals was bragging that he'd get the fastest pin in the tournament finals. Well, lo and behold, 1 minute 25 into the first period, he did get pinned the fastest in the finals of the tournament. Not exactly on point, but I became a professor at a university that wouldn't accept me as a student. Teaching classes I wasn't deemed good enough to take when I was younger was gratifying. I'd been working as a data entry clerk at night in a medical practice. The new business manager found out that I knew bookkeeping. She assigned me to balance the checkbooks. None had been balanced since she first started there. I thought the doctors were fools, but I balanced them and gave them back to her. Then she threatened to fire me if I ever mentioned to anyone how long the books had not been balanced. Wrong-o. I was a temp, and at the best of times I didn't care if I left a job or not. I spent the rest of my shift typing up a complete report on everything that I knew was wrong in the practice, from handling patients' appointments to posting payments. I think it was over 5 pages long. Then I made copies of my report and dropped them in the doctor's mailboxes at the hospitals that they covered. That way she wouldn't know that I'd stuck a knife in her back. I offered the doctors 3 options. First, I disappear and they forget the whole thing, or I hire a business manager on commission and leave, or I take over and I'd straighten the place out, and when it ran right, I'd leave then. I'd given them my name and number. Then I went home and started sorting what stayed and what went with me. I didn't even bother to call in the next shift or the one after that. Then I got a call from the head of the practice asking for a meeting. I met with all 5 to 7 doctors. I offered to stick around until they could hire a real business manager. The next day, I was the manager and she was unemployed. Nobody threatens me. I hated that job, but I did it just out of sheer spite towards her. I was at a new high school. My English teacher gave the class a take-home PSAT for practice. I handed it in and got a 1450 out of 1600. She accused me of cheating and lying. Eventually, we left it at, "Well, let's see how he goes on the real test." I got 1510 out of 1600, the highest in the school. F that witch, it still feels good 25 years later. I was considered the dumb one out of my group of friends at school. I'm the only one who obtained a college education, moved away from our hometown, got a decent job, and didn't get anyone pregnant. Go me! My dad used to tell me all the time not to bother with higher learning because I'd just waste my money by failing everything. I graduated with honors, and Dad still tells everyone how much of a loser I am. Oh, this one always makes me smile. When I was in high school, just about to graduate, we all had to go see the careers advisor at school. For a little bit of backstory, it's important to know that I'm physically disabled but not mentally impaired in any way. Anyway, when I went to see her, she told me that perhaps I shouldn't aim for university as it was going to be a challenge with my educational deficits. I asked her what she meant and she said, "Well, your disability, of course." I very politely explained that my disability has had no impact on my mental cognition at all, and she said, "I don't think you're right. I think you need to consider the fact that you'll never work or live a normal life. These days, I'm at university studying to be a social worker. Yes, I know it's not something incredibly academic, but I made it to university. Screw that ignorant careers advisor." I don't know if there are more of these to come, but we're getting a fairly decent volume of awful school career advisors so far. I mean, I know they're meant to help students manage their expectations, but this one felt really ignorant. I once was driving my sister's Geo Metro because my car broke down. It has like pink flower stickers all over it. Some high school tough guy in his raised pickup truck cut me off badly on the back road. I honked my horn and he pulled over. I followed suit. He gets out and starts walking towards my car. I proceed to untangle myself from this tiny car and I step out. The look on his face when he sees my 6'3", 280-pound frame was definitely worth the hour-and-a-half drive in that tiny piece of crap. This woman asks if I was strong enough to put some boxes on a shelf, so I picked her up so she could put the damn box up there by herself. But remember to turn yourself into Ryan Gosling first. I repeat, if you do not look like Ryan Gosling before you do this, then it's just an unwanted advance. 5'2", 110 pounds. In high school, I was on drumline. I played bass first, then snare, then tenors. Decided to try out for Carolina Crown on tenors. Guys kept making comments, she won't be able to keep up. She probably can't even play. I was the second best player trying out on tenors. While they were all whining about not being able to do stuff, I was just beasting it out and not saying a word. Frickers. I'm small, not fricking physically challenged. The frick does being small have to do with playing? I did a stay one night at college thing and we started playing Guitar Hero, where everyone was strangers. The self-diagnosed GH-obsessed guy in college failed the song and passed the guitar to me, the quiet girl. During the intro he said, "Sorry, it's still on expert mode." Then I proceeded to kill it. They said it was because I was Asian. I tend to agree. That happened to me too. Before I was good friends with my floor mates, a bunch of them were playing Guitar Hero 3 on the couch. One guy that everyone already hated was just killing people because he was the only one who could play on expert. I just sit down and he goes, "Okay, we're playing The Cliffs of Dover on expert. Keep up." I got 99% of the song and he shut up for the rest of the night. Great guy now that I know him, though. I'm currently looking for jobs in the craft beer industry in the Bay Area. People in the industry never treat me seriously as I'm a 5'6" beardless Asian man that only needs to shave once every 2 weeks. According to them, only hip guys with long beards and tattoos can be beer experts, and I obviously look like an 18-year-old high schooler that has absolutely no beer knowledge at all. I've read most of the brewing science textbooks. Heck, I even bought college microbiology and chemistry textbooks to read on my spare time to educate myself. I passed testing and other qualification exams and I'm doing an internship in a brewery to get experiences just to let the white folks know that, hey, Fergus here might really know his stuff. Maybe next time you hire a sales rep, consider the beardless Asian Fergus. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I've had an ex-girlfriend, teacher, employer, and parent tell me my musical career would go nowhere and that heavy metal is stupid. This year I got signed on to Napalm Records, one of the most reputable metal labels in the world, and I played Wacken Open Air, the biggest heavy metal festival in the world. They're still working their 9-to-5s while I tour the world doing what I love. New Year's Eve 1999. Myself as a 9-year-old was sliding down the slide at my local playground. When I got to the bottom, a group of about 6 guys surrounded me. Their so-called leader, who would have been 10 or 11, repeatedly asked me to hit him, thinking I was easy pickings, no doubt. I refused several times before he kicked me. I was sitting in the sand at the bottom. So I stood up and wailed the guy as hard as I could. I broke his nose and he ran off crying. Then his mum came back and asked me why I did it. The answer? Because he told me to. I had a guy say, "Man, you weigh 190 pounds. Nope, not even close. More like 250. They thought the Declaration of Independence couldn't be stolen. I sure showed them. I got engaged at 17, married 3 weeks after I turned 18. The entire family went bananas. My father told me I'd be living in a crap hole, never leave my little hometown, never make anything of myself, and never go to college. My grandmother poked my now husband in the chest and told us to our faces that our marriage wouldn't last 6 months. I did go to college, I got an associate degree, got out of that hometown, bought a house, got a bachelor's degree while working full-time, sold that other house, built a bigger house, and we've been happily married for 13 years now. Longer than my parents' marriage lasted. And every single time we celebrate another anniversary, it's the greatest FU to my entire family inside my head. Never tell a girl they can't do something. Guy made my life hell for years. He had me convinced that if I left him, I'd lose the kids and he'd unalive me. He had all the money, all the power. He told me regularly that I was worthless and ugly. The phrase, "piece of crap," still sends me into a bit of a panic if I hear it. He thought he was going to own me forever. I'd never make it on my own. I heard that every day. I'd be nothing without him. I'd be homeless. I can't do anything without him. Screw that. I'm making it on my own. It's a struggle sometimes and I had to ask for help in the beginning, but I'm happy and safe. More importantly, the kids are happy and safe. We don't have a lot, but we're okay. My God, well, I have to think that he was partly telling you these things to stop you from leaving, as much as because he believed them. But nonetheless, well done for getting out of that awful situation and keeping the kids out too. I'm sure it took a lot of strength to get out of there, and you did the right thing. The jocks in my class were serious D-bags. I was friends with several basketball players, and all were awesome people. The guys I was taking class with were just mean. They'd frequently try to injure lesser players to get us off their team. 2 weeks before a big convention, I was playing touch football when I was accidentally tackled and injured pretty badly. I realized that there are probably way more nice jocks than mean, but the ones I was in class with were awful people. Mostly because of them, I hated gym. I almost failed and didn't graduate because of it. I was a dancer, a serious ballet student. I was in the studio 5 days a week and worked out at home 4 days a week. In my junior year, 1989, I had to take the stupid presidential fitness exam. Fine. I did the stupid thing. The PE teacher said if I could at least not come in last, she'd pass me. I wasn't a great runner, and I knew that. However, I came in above almost every single student in my class for leg presses, aerobic tests, sit-ups, and overall fitness. 2 guys beat me, and I was the top female. The coach insisted I'd cheated. I had to do the test again. The very next day after school, it was just us. I beat all of my own scores out of sheer rage. When it was over, I tried to again explain that just because I saw no merit in dodgeball, it didn't mean I wasn't fit. I could do stuff with my body all of those jocks couldn't dream of. I still hold the record for the most sit-ups in a minute and leg presses for women. Screw jocks. People have been underestimating me all my life. My parents were both in the beauty business. I worked with them, helping them to run the largest beauty school in Oklahoma for 19 years. Since I was a man in the beauty business, everyone thought I was gay. I was a Marine from 1966 to 72. This was when the Vietnam War was going full blast. The war was very unpopular. Since I was a Marine, everyone thought I was a soulless killer. I was a professional musician for many years. Of course, everyone knows musicians are a bunch of substance addicts and drunks. In truth, I'm not gay, I'm not a drunk or a smack addict, and I've never killed innocent civilians. The point is that nobody knows enough about you to make judgments about you except yourself. All your life, people are going to assume they know enough about you to make judgments. They're wrong. However, that won't stop them from doing it. Some background first. I worked at my family's restaurant, and to avoid special treatment, I'd go by a different last name so nobody would know that I was the owner's son. So fast forward about a year and we hired a guy who I'll call Colin because that's his name. Colin was a major D-bag who tried to unload his responsibilities onto me, and one day I just told him that I'm not doing his job. So, what does he do? He puts me into a sleeper hold and only lets go a second before the lights go out. As soon as he let go, I told him I was the owner's son and that he shouldn't bother coming into work tomorrow. He came to work the next day and we locked him out. He was fired. I mean, to be fair, he should have been fired regardless of who you were. Kid challenged me to Pokemon. I effed them up with Bidoof. I told some kid I'd kick him in the crotch. He said he didn't think I could kick that high. I kicked him in the crotch. I'm a 65-year-old woman and Reddit underestimates me all the time. Apparently, if you're my age and female to boot, you only play games like Candy Crush, never Skyrim or Diablo or Civilization or Portal. Also, I must not know anything about computers or technology. People are shocked and I suspect a little suspicious when I address those topics. I hope I've changed 1 or 2 minds about the possibility that old people are not all the same, just as young people aren't all the same. I've always carried a few extra pounds and I took a lot of crap from people, in particular in baseball. What people don't know is that I'm actually quite talented and faster than most people half my size. One time, some kid from the other team told me fat kids couldn't play baseball before the game, and I proceeded to hit 3 triples and an inside-the-park home run that game. During my college years, a drunken butthead grabbed me while I was walking home from the library, and he started feeling things he had no right to feel. Definitely an unwanted advance. I gouged that motherfricker with my keys. There was blood. I walked away while he kept yelling, "What the frick?" When I was 15, I was playing golf with my friend on par 3, waiting for 2 friends to finish putting when 2 D-bags came up behind us and told us to tee off. The rules of golf state that if there's another group on a par 3, you can't hit until they're finished. Yet these guys told me that I wouldn't be able to hit that far anyway. So, me and my friend waited until the group had finished before we teed off. I went first, took a few practice swings, they told me to hurry up, and then I slam dunked it straight into the hole. The look on their face was frickin' priceless. I mean, as good a golfer as I'm sure you might be, it does sound like karma might have netted you some incredible luck to show those guys. Unless you're playing mini-golf, in which case it's more possible. A hole-in-one on a par 3 regular course is wild. On holiday in Croatia, a drunk local accused me of staring at his girlfriend, which I probably was, and thought that he'd be a tough guy. He threw a punch, I blocked it and hit him in the side of the head, and he went all wobbly and fell into a hedge. Within 15 seconds, I'd run off and disappeared into a crowd. I'm pretty skinny, but I was studying Krav Maga at the time, and the whole thing happened before I really registered what was going on. I ran off because Croatia seems the kind of place where the police are going to trust the drunk local over the sober tourist. Hope the guy was okay though. People underestimate me all the time. I hated school and I was a very average student, but loved university and learning, and found stuff that I was quite good at. I became a CEO in my early 30s. I deal a lot with other big businesses and know most of my state's politicians, their staff, major corporations, CEOs, senior management from a whole range of organizations. But really, I'm just a regular guy. I like cycling, running, shopping, wine, food, I wear jeans, I go for dinner, no different to any other 30-something. My wife is a couple of years younger than me, but looks about 20. She still gets refused alcohol in some places. As such, when we're out, people rarely suspect that I'm so well connected. I'm certainly no butthole, but I've used my influence to have people fired or reprimanded. All in all though, I try to use my power for good. I've insisted on people getting pay rises or more senior positions. I never say, "Do you know who I am?" or big myself up, but it sure is satisfying to have influence. Recently, I dealt with a waiter in a major venue. Great girl, very professional, but stuck in a crap job. Turns out we had a major function coming up, I think 400 people in a conference. I insisted she be put in charge of the conferences, and my staff worked with her to sort all the details. Long story short, it was a huge success, and she's now manager of the entire functions component of their business. After a back injury which saw me in hospital for 3 weeks and needing to learn to walk again, my now ex-girlfriend told me to just give up grappling, that I shouldn't do it anymore at all ever. I put on a heap of weight, got out to 115 kilos, and was basically miserable as F. She ended up leaving me over my determination to get back on the mat. Nearly a year of painful rehab later, I won 2 super heavyweight state championships in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, plus took a second and third in the open divisions. 14-2 for the weekend. I received my blue belt a week later from my coach and friend Thiago Stefanuti, who stood by me through the whole thing. I'm now walking around at 95 kilos and getting ready for a major tournament on September 21st. Never ever give up, and more importantly, surround yourself with people who will help you achieve your goals instead of burying you with their negativity. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.